The story begins with the image of the hound of the Baskerville clan, Vikier van Baskerville, a man with long scars across his face, weathered by countless battles and always standing on the razor's edge between life and death. True to his name, he served his family and his father with everything he had. But now Vikier has been falsely accused of colluding with the demon race. He is kneeling there, a collar around his neck just beneath the guillotine. Vikier has been sentenced to death. The tether is cut. The blade falls and blood spurts as the head drops. The white-haired man standing there is the patriarch of the Baskerville family. He watches coldly as crows dive in to tear at the flesh of one of his hounds. Just before execution, Vikier swore to himself that if he could live again, after he had bitten his prey to death, he would never live the life of a hound again. Bright red drops of the hound's blood, the blood of the Baskerville line, fall one by one into the still water. The scene suddenly shifts. Moonlight pierces a dark room where an inscrutable cradle rests. It looks like a nursery. The babies lie in their cradles and cry without stop. Only the child in the middle stares up wide-eyed, wondering where he is. With his consciousness intact, the boy feels and asks himself. His body is heavy. The surroundings are noisy. No, this cannot be. Is this hell? The answer is, this is the domain of the Baskerville clan, a great, sturdy castle on the plains, a demonstration of the power of the Iron Blood Sword family. Inside the nursery, the children wail on and on. When one cries, the whole lot cry. The patriarch Hugo Le Baskerville stands there frowning in discomfort, muttering, "Pathetic lot." Hugo walks up and down, hands in his pockets and complaining that there is not a single special child here. He thinks they're all rejects. Unconsciously, he stops before one cradle, glances over and grunts. This child seems to have attracted him. Hugo looks, then ponders a while, then looks down at the child lying there and appraises. This reject seems quieter. Hugo orders a servant, "Bring this child to the sword rack," and of course the man responds with respect, "Yes, my lord." The boy's eyes suddenly widen, a red gleam flashing as he looks toward Hugo, thinking to himself that the very culprit who accused and killed him stands before him. The powerful man in front of him, the celebrated patriarch of the Iron Blood Sword clan, is Hugo Le Baskerville. The small hand he raises to look at himself, now he is a scion of Hugo, Vikier van Baskerville, reborn as a child. Vikier remembers his past life. He lived as a hound, an illegitimate son, trained in the worst conditions. A dog must do whatever it takes to complete tasks: assassination, reconnaissance, ambush, intimidation. A dog does all the dirty work to help the Baskerville family become one of the 7 great clans. The reason Vikier was loyal was simple. He wanted recognition from the family and from Hugo. 10 years after the gate to the demon realm opened, the war with the demon race ended with humanity's victory, and the reward given to the hound who had devoted himself was abandonment. Vikier was executed by guillotine, the very scene we saw at the beginning, because the hound had come to know too much. Back in the present, little Vikier now raises his tiny fist and vows he will never live that life again. He writhes in the wooden cradle with thoughts of immediate revenge, but with this newborn body there is nothing he can do. He lies prone, eyes knitted with hatred but full of resolve. Vikier thinks, being brought to the sword rack is a good chance to grow strong. Now what's necessary is to become stronger. The Baskerville sword rack is a place where sharp blades are planted close together. Children born into the Baskerville clan must pass through it in one attempt. They are thrown into a maze of blades, and after surviving they must go to the river Styx to test their mettle. The Styx is the legendary river that forges children's bodies into iron and steel, yet only some endure. A diagram forms in Vikier's memory, and he begins to calculate. To reach the Styx he must first pass through thousands of blades. The scene moves to the sword rack, where the young Vikier has been brought. The boy is trying to wriggle between the blades to crawl forward. He does not hesitate to grip the sharp steel with his skinny arms. He recalls that in his prior life he failed alongside his siblings and could not achieve the result. But this time will be different. Vikier is receiving direct attention from the patriarch himself, who stands watching while the retainers gape in astonishment at Vikier's performance. Across the sticks, aside from Hugo's composure as patriarch, everyone else is shocked to see the boy crawl into the river. Vikir tells himself he will monopolize as much of the Styx' blessing as possible. The pale mana water is shifting, tinged now with the red of blood. Vikir sinks slowly. The blood from wounds sustained crawling through the blade maze flows out and mixes into the stream. While the water soaks through his flesh and bones via those wounds, Vikir had not imagined it would be so effective. He clamps his hands over his nose and mouth to keep air from escaping and, with fierce determination, tries to hold his breath as long as possible. He does not know how much pain this will bring, but he must endure it. On the bank, two retainers shout anxiously down, "Young master, you must get out. You'll die if you stay in the water any longer. Pull him out. We must pull him out." Unlike them, Hugo is calm and smiles coldly, finding it immensely entertaining. He then asks Barrymore, "How long has that brat been in the river?" John Barrymore, the steward of the Baskerville house, replies, 7 minutes, my lord." Hearing that, Hugo steps forward with a smile. 7 minutes? Huh, he's probably dead. The retainer startles and says, "My lord?" He steps up and looks down at the water, where bubbles are gurgling up. Hugo calls out, "Son, you can come up now." Below, Vikir hears it, but is still forcing himself to hold his breath. He recognizes Hugo's voice and thinks, "Do you think I will give up so easily?" Vikir keeps drawing in the Styx' spirit essence with the thought that he must absorb it to the last drop. But a child's strength has limits. Vikir then opens his mouth with a few choking gasps. Air that had been trapped rushes out. His eyes roll white and his body floats listless in the water. Even so, thoughts keep echoing in his head. I must endure, I must endure, I must hold on, yet consciousness begins to fade. The stream of bubbles rising from Vikir's body grows scant, and after a while a hand lifts his foot out of the Styx. Hugo looks at Vikir in his hand with amusement and says, "Look at this little one, being in the Styx is not enough for him. He wants more to drink." He peers into the boy's mouth and notices that he already has teeth. Hugo asks, "What is the name of this child?" Steward John answers, "He is young Master Vikir van Baskerville, my lord." Hearing the name, Hugo repeats it with a cold smile, Vikir. Looking at the boy in his arms, temporarily unconscious from having drunk the Styx, Hugo remarks, "It seems I have a proper son at last." Vikir still clings to his vengeful resolve and allows himself a moment of joy. Hugo. The gruesome, feral image of the hound's head flashes before him, and he vows, "Now I need time to sharpen my fangs, and when the time comes I will bite your head to pieces." The furious face from the past combined with the present child's immaturity creates a stark contrast, but the hatred remains unchanged. He tells himself that the Baskerville clan will be erased from history by his own hand. Vikir van Baskerville. In his previous life, the swordsman with the cross-shaped scar on his face was Hugo le Baskerville's illegitimate son, Vikir van Baskerville. By 8 he already possessed a genius-level talent worthy of being called a prodigy, but within his clan that was still merely acceptable. At 20, Vikir was assigned assassination, intelligence, and commander elimination missions. By 29 he began to stagnate compared to others' genius and started to hit the ceiling of his swordsmanship. When Vikir turned 30, the gate to the demon realm was opened and the demon invasion began. At 35 he had survived the era of extinction and slain countless demons. Reaching 39, the long war finally ended with humanity's victory, and at 40 Vikir received titles for his loyalty as a hound. Those rewards ultimately turned into one slander after another, and then his head was placed beneath the guillotine. Back in the present, Vikir, now in a child's body, lies there frowning and looks up. He looks at the ceiling wondering if this is the nursery. Vikir flips over into a crawling position and thinks to himself that this means he succeeded in absorbing the water of the river Styx. With this, he can start from a better point than before. Suddenly a woman's voice rings in the room. She holds a blue box carefully and says, "Goodness, madam is really overbearing." That draws Vikir's attention, and he listens as she goes on. "Why did she tell me to place this into the cradle of the little young master?" He wonders, the mistress, is it? She sets the box in his cradle. Vikir is puzzled. Why would someone suddenly give a gift to an illegitimate child like him? The box cracks open and a dense, pitch-black murderous aura seeps out. Vikir draws back slightly as a black snake crawls out, not one but two venomous snakes bearing Fang and Evil Kai. With memories from his past life, he easily recognizes them as blood psychic serpents. Vikir drops to his knees and thinks, no way, two such rare monsters just to assassinate me. There are not many women who can be called Madam in Baskerville. She must be trying to reduce competition for her own child. The two venomous snakes hiss and simultaneously prepare to strike. Vikir calmly reasons that even the other children in the nursery rooms might be killed. He swiftly snatches them, his hands closing neatly around the heads of both blood serpents. Vikir smiles coldly with deadly intent, exactly as the Baskerville clan would expect. Facing the highly toxic blood serpent, he declares, I will end your lives with these hands. Then blood appears on the white mattress in Vikir's cradle. The next day at the nursery, everyone standing around the cradle is utterly astonished at what lies before them. Vikir sleeps there with his tongue out, and nearby are the two blood serpents' bodies torn into pieces and smeared in gore. The Baskervilles are completely terrified to see a child sleeping peacefully beside the corpses of two blood serpents. That day, the wet nurse who was ordered to guard the child was punished and executed, and in the end the cause of the blood serpents' corpses remained a mystery to everyone. Only a single young hound understood the truth. 8 years after that incident, Vikir has grown and now sits with his brothers. They line up neatly while an instructor gestures to a chalkboard full of writing. The instructor lectures, Little young masters, today we will learn about the stages of a swordsman. He adds, if a swordsman cannot imbue mana into their blade, they are called an apprentice swordsman. Once they can put even a little of their mana into the blade, they are called a proficient swordsman. When the blade can emit that mana outward as an aura, they are called a graduating swordsman. The instructor concludes, and finally, when that aura can be condensed and change form at the swordsman's will, they are called a master sworder. He introduces to the children that Baskerville's finest, Lord Hugo, is also a master sworder. At that the kids are awed and admire. Only one boy shows little outward emotion and quietly contemplates. Hugo is already a master sworder. I must recover all the strength I had before reincarnating and prior to my coming-of-age ceremony. The instructor adjusts his glasses and notices. Young Master Vikir is lost in thought again. He observes and thinks inwardly that with the body enhanced by 7 minutes in the sticks and an analytical genius mind far beyond ordinary, Vikir's talent is in another class compared to the other young masters. The head of the family will be very excited to hear of Vikir's achievements. Meanwhile, Vikir thinks, how many years will it take me to kill Hugo? At this moment, Vikir van Baskerville is 8 years old. Nearby 3 boys who look identical except for the tuft of hair on their foreheads glance at Vikir and smile schemingly. After a while one of them pushes his hand into Vikir's chest and they sneer. Hey, you mongrel trash. The trio crowd him. Hi bro taunts. You're just an illegitimate mongrel. But there are strange rumors about you, you know? The other 2 echo. You know, right? They continue. You soaked yourself in the sticks for 7 minutes. And even killed 2 ultra-venomous blood serpents right after you were born. Hearing such nonsense, Vikir stands silently. He remembers his previous life and knows these boys well. They were the ones who falsely accused him and stabbed him as he tried to flee. Their appearance is easy to recognize. They're Hugo Le Baskerville's trident. They keep taunting. Cut it out with the tricks. Stop it. And they are distinguished by the tuft of hair on their foreheads from left to right as Highbrow Le Baskerville, Midbrow Le Baskerville, and Lowbrow Le Baskerville, and they are all 9 years old. The 3 go on. I don't think I have any liking for you. Me neither. Vikir recalls that within the next 10 years they will become extremely annoying enemies he must face. Better to deter them now to prevent trouble later. Suddenly a knife is drawn and pointed at him. Vikir remains calm. Highbrow asks, After soaking in the sticks, the body becomes hard like tempered steel and won't be wounded by blades anymore, so we were told. That means you won't die if I stab you, right? The two brothers chime in, right? Then Highbrow glances and calls loudly, Lowbrow. His brother smiles and answers, I understand, Highbrow. Lowbrow circles behind Vikier and covers his nose and mouth, whispering into his ear, You could endure 7 minutes in the sticks. I'll eat my own hand if you can even last 3 minutes. Vikier stands thinking that children are more cruel than adults. He decides he'll play along with them for a bit. 1 minute passes and Highbrow and Midbrow share the same doubt. There's no way those rumors are true. 3 minutes later they are astonished and exclaim he lasted a long time. 10 minutes later their faces twist into extreme horror, eyes wide speechless. Lowbrow stands sweating and panicking, wondering if the rumor is true. Highbrow senses something wrong and orders immediately, It's not fun anymore, let him go. Midbrow mocks, Let him go. Lowbrow stammers, Let him go. Before he can finish, Lowbrow's hand trembles and he stares as blood appears on his hand. He clutches it and screams in pain while Midbrow shouts, What are you doing? Vikier smiles coldly with a feral look, wipes the blood from his mouth and asks, Why didn't you say earlier you'd eat your hand? Highbrow, wielding the knife confidently, says, Even if you could do that, we wouldn't fear you. Midbrow repeats, We don't fear you, but Lowbrow cries out, I'm scared my hand's been cut off. The eldest brother turns to soothe him. Calm down, little brother, go see the priest and have it reattached, come on. But Vikier coldly says, Who told you you could leave? Highbrow flies into rage, brandishing the knife and hurling insults. You filthy bastard! He thrusts the knife straight into Vikier's belly and shouts, Did you forget we're 1 year older than you? But things do not go as expected. Highbrow's eyes widen as the knife only rips the cloth of Vikier's robe. Vikier's voice rings out, I think you've forgotten, big brother. He grabs Highbrow's hand and bends it backward with force, saying, This is Baskerville. If you have the strength and talent, age does not matter. And Highbrow drops the knife and screams in pain. Vikier smiles coldly and menacingly, lowering his voice to threaten, Let's play this to the end, my elder brothers. Highbrow cried out in horror, Are the rumors true? Without letting him say another word, Vikier delivered a punch that shattered his mouth, teeth and lips tangled together, blood spraying everywhere. The two younger brothers, seeing their elder knocked out, panicked and cried out, Big brother! Highbrow lay there with fresh blood spurting from his nose. Midbrow, though afraid, still bravely raised both fists and cursed, You bastard! As before he could say anything more he took a kick from Vikier that sent him flipping flat on his back. Vikier stood there calmly and said amid the groans, Do not be afraid. You will be whole again if treated in time. Then he coldly picked up their knife and declared, But I will not let you leave this room, and at this rate you will be disabled for the rest of your life. Vikier glanced over with a cold smile and offered, So I will be generous and let one of you go. Lowbrow, hearing that, asked back, Really? His eyes widened as he repeated, Let one of us leave, while my two brothers with broken mouths sit there unable to say anything but groan in pain. Vikier threw the knife as if tossing a bone to dogs and pronounced, That is for you to decide. After that he put his hands in his pockets and walked out the door, not forgetting to tell the three brothers, I will not wait long, so settle it quickly. Vikier cast a sly smile, At least one of you should live, should he not? The three brothers stared wide-eyed in terror. They could not believe this was the manner of an 8-year-old. Immediately after, the storeroom door was shut, darkness covering them, yet unable to fade the fear on the faces of the 3 9-year-olds. He stood outside the door, enjoying the sounds of the three brothers fighting inside, and with those sounds the Baskerville trident shattered by their own hands. The scene cut to a window where bright moonlight poured in. John, the family butler, stood there with a stack of documents in hand and reported, Master, there was another clash with the Morgue family at the Ruby Mine. The Morgue family is demanding the Ruby Mine within their territory. Hugo, sitting there, replied, There will be an opportunity to discuss it with them as soon as possible. The morgues will approach us first. Still, do you have anything else to report? John quickly answered, regarding the most recent midterm evaluation at the children's castle. He reported that young Master Vikier achieved first place in the written exam. The head of the Baskerville family smiled and asked, "Is that so?" Hugo asked further, "When is the practical exam?" The butler replied, "It will begin in 5 days. The knights guarding the children's castle are preparing for the trip." The master added, "Then the children's castle will be completely empty right now." John hesitated a little. "Master, there are some things this servant should mention about the children's castle." Hugo listened intently as the butler said, "There has been a larger fight among the young masters recently." Upon hearing this, he immediately asked, "A large fight? How many were killed?" John began to recount. No one died, but young Master Highbrow's teeth were completely ruined. Young Master Midbrow's jaw was caved in, and young Master Lowbrow's left index finger was severed. He added that they have been treated and recovered, but they have been greatly damaged in spirit. Hugo paused. Were they not very close to one another? I doubt they would fight each other like that. The butler explained, because they fought with other brothers of theirs. John slowly reported, the one who put those 3 brothers in that state was their younger brother by 1 year. The young master who ranked first in the exam that this servant just mentioned, young Master Vikier. Hearing this made Master Hugo involuntarily startle, a flash of astonishment crossing his face. A while later in the hallway of the Baskerville family castle, the lights shone brightly and everything was impeccably tidy. Vikier was summoned and stood there with a friendly, confident smile. Hugo sat in the patriarch's chair, smiling at him and praising, "You have grown a great deal, Vikier." The boy cheerfully smiled back, "Good afternoon, master." He then asked pointedly, "Master, I suppose I am the head of a family. I heard you crippled the trio in the advanced class." Vikier raised his hand in feigned innocence and replied, "I heard they have already received special treatment." John beside him looked a little worried. Hugo furrowed his brow and asked further, "I am not speaking of their physical condition. I am speaking of how you hurt their hearts." He continued as he recalled the trio. Since that day they have begun eating separately and have stopped talking to each other. Their 3-way combined attack was a work of art. But because of you there is now a great rift between them. Vikier remained silent and wore an innocent smile. Seeing that, Hugo asked, "Do you not think you did wrong?" The boy calmly replied with another question. "Wrong? How was I wrong?" He pressed, "Did you not turn your elder brothers into broken vessels?" Suddenly, for a moment, the innocence vanished, replaced by a sharp Vikier with a hard answer. "But I am stronger than them. How can someone strong be at fault?" John broke into a sweat and looked to the master. Hugo added, "Your brothers came before you and generously forgave you. Do you still feel no guilt?" The boy raised his hand, smiled, and asked, "Forgive me." Then Vikier recalled the time before regression. The last child of a destroyed family came to the Baskervilles to meet Hugo directly. She, who had become a nun after all those years, came to tell him she had forgiven him. After hearing that, Hugo had replied with an overwhelmingly superior statement. And now Vikier repeated those words coldly, eyes flashing. "I believe forgiveness is nothing more than an apology from the weak who cannot take revenge." That answer pleased Hugo. He laughed coldly and showed keen interest in the boy before him. Then the master added, "Strength is justice, which also means becoming weak is a sin. It seems you understand the Baskerville family motto well." Hugo happily turned and called, "Barrymore." He hurriedly replied, "Yes, master." He gestured toward Vikier and ordered, "Go to the food stores and give this boy anything he wants." Hugo did not forget to admonish, "But do not be too greedy. Only give him what he can carry." Vikier beamed and asked, "May I have chocolate?" "Thank you, master." Then the 8-year-old walked away with the old butler. Just as Vikier reached the door, Hugo called him back. "Son." He sat there and instructed, "The upcoming midterm evaluation. Do well." Vikier paused to listen. An unspoken command pressed on his small shoulders. "Do not lose to anyone in the main house." Hearing this caused a slight change in Vikier's expression. He appeared worried and replied, "Yes, master." The scene shifted to the food storage where the manager's voice rang out. This is the chocolate enjoyed by the Morgue family's fashionable young ladies. John continued to introduce, this is the highest quality product we had great difficulty acquiring this time. Vikier immediately replied, I do not want any processed kind. Despite the man's puzzlement, the boy added, I want cacao beans, the kind with a very strong flavor. John, dubious, asked again to be sure, you mean unprocessed beans? After a while they brought out a sack of deep pink cacao beans. The chef standing there introduced, these are blood beans, a type of cacao with an extremely alluring flavor. One bean is enough to make 100 liters of chocolate. Vikier stood there, picked up a bean and tasted it. Seeing his face cringe as he bit the cacao bean, Butler John thought, I cannot believe he can eat such bitter raw beans, he must really like chocolate. He silently observed the boy and thought, young Master Vikier is calculating the master's words, give him only what he can carry. So he devised a method to consume as much chocolate as possible within those constraints. John judged the 8-year-old to be truly cunning. The chef beside him asked, young master, should we process them in your room after preparation? Vikier turned and replied, no need to process them, just show me where they are. The butler adjusted his glasses and observed the young master, remarking privately, could the young master simply be a child of unique temperament? Vikier did not want chocolate because he craved it. The purpose of these blood beans would appear in the practical exam 5 days later. Vikier stood there with his hands in his pockets, wearing a confident and calculating smile. On that day something unprecedented, a major incident, would occur within the Baskerville family. The emblem of the Baskerville family is the image of 2 blood-red swords crossed with a dog in the center, and they are known to the world as the clan of madmen. Every child born there receives strict education. After learning how to walk, they must climb a steep mountain to train their basic endurance, with no rest allowed outside the regulated time. When sleeping, they must lie with the corpse of a demon beast or an imp to adapt to the harsh environment. When that phase ends, they will be 8 years old, and the little hunting dogs must face evaluations filled with dreadful hardships. That is why the Baskerville clan began to be called the Clan of Madmen. On the day of the survival practical assessment, the children are given weapons and sent into the gloomy forest. And today, the young hunting dogs gather at Mount Le Rouge et Le Noir, a mountain filled with demonic creatures captured from the border of their territory. The children stand in orderly lines before a squad of mysterious hooded figures of the family. The instructor of the Baskerville clan, the guide dog Pavlov van Baskerville, stood there and said, young masters, the content of the practical evaluation is still very simple. He announced, survive here for 1 full month and hunt powerful demon beasts. You only need to remember these 2 things. The children listened nervously as knowledge was explained. You will be awarded 10 points when you successfully save someone's life, 30 points when you save someone without being seriously injured, 50 points if you survive by eliminating another young master, 70 points when you hunt down a demon beast and survive, and 90 points if you meet all the conditions stated before. Pavlov pointed at the badge on the children's necks and added, furthermore, a badge stolen from another will be counted as bonus points. The situations were listed clearly, 0 points if you die, and there is no way to gain 100 points. I hope all of you remember Lord Hugo's teaching, let your guard down and you will die instantly. Pavlov's voice grew deep. I advise you not to leave the forbidden zones, because Mount Le Rouge et Le Noir holds many unexplored dangerous areas. I suggest you stay within the zone containing demon beasts that we have already tamed. Guide dogs and guardian knights will secretly score you during the trial. Vikier stood there calmly, because with memories of his previous life, he already knew all of this too well. Beside him 2 children whispered, is that the boy who was drowned in the Styx River for 7 minutes? There are also rumors he strangled 2 venomous snakes in his cradle. Around them was endless gossip about the genius child. I heard he also achieved maximum score on the written exam. Let's see if he performs well in the practical test. Vikier ignored the nonsense, smiling with enjoyment. Mount Le Rouge et Le Noir, I haven't been here for some time. Suddenly, the sound of a bell rang nearby, catching the attention of Vikir and the bro trio. Pavlov shook the bell in his hand and said, "This bell will mark the beginning of the evaluation." Immediately he shook it and gently said, "I pray for your success." The bell in Pavlov's hand rang continuously, and in the blink of an eye none of the young masters below could be seen. One of them slipped away thinking, "I must secure a favorable position first, then I'll head to the spot that drew attention in last year's trial." Behind him 2 others followed with the plan, "There's no rule saying we must survive alone. We'll just follow him and steal his points." The trio advanced together, but soon an argument broke out. Highbrow said, "Let's secure that area first." Midbrow retorted, "Don't order me around." Lowbrow declared, "I'll act alone, just mind your own business." Meanwhile Pavlov lit a cigarette and wondered, has it already begun? With a long scar across his left eye, he stood there savoring the moment and thought to himself, this test does not encourage killing, but neither is it forbidden, it is simply not encouraged. Since killing will deduct points, they will avoid murdering others with their own hands as much as possible. But still, someone must die and be thrown down to the white wolves below. Pavlov spoke aloud, with several guide dogs watching over. Everything should be guaranteed, death will be kept to the lowest number. The scene shifted to somewhere in the forest. A guide dog secretly hid behind a tree, watching. He was assigned to observe Vikir. Looking at the boy's actions, he wondered, this place is near the unexplored zone. How far do you intend to go, young Master Vikir? The guide dog thought, he is a genius who has displayed outstanding skills since childhood. I am looking forward to seeing what he shows me. But his behavior now is a little disappointing. Standing before a large dried tree with all its leaves fallen, Vikir asked aloud, "Is it around here?" Then he took a branch and scraped the ground, murmuring, "The soil must be soft enough." After that, he deliberately raised his voice for the guide dog to hear. "Now, I will decide where I'll stay for the time being." Vikir stretched and continued, "It's about time I enjoy my vacation, isn't it?" Hearing that shocked the man, a vacation. Vikir began gathering dry branches nearby. Meanwhile, the other children continued battling and competing fiercely. Next, he dug a hole, dried his shirt beside it, everything so casual. Elsewhere, the 3 brothers, despite disagreements, were working together to bring down a large bear. But Vikir, after pitching a small tent, simply lay there resting. The guide dog assigned to watch him grew bored. Watching Vikir light a fire to warm himself, he thought, all he does is sleep, spend days digging a hole, hunting for food, and gathering firewood. Does he plan to just hide here and waste time? He looked over, suspicious. There are rumors this boy is a genius. Perhaps I don't even need to watch him since he doesn't intend to run away. Then he left his position, leaving Vikir free and unobserved. With sharp senses, Vikir instantly noticed his departure. His cold face shifted into a smile, rejoicing. Finally, he's gone. Looking at the crackling fire and the roasting meat, he murmured, camping is also a bit nostalgic. He recalled a past life mission where someone told him, "Hey chief, cacao beans are the best way to remove the stench of meat, especially concentrated in blood beans." Now Vikir applied that knowledge, throwing several cacao beans into the fire. Immediately they burned and released their distinct aroma. Vikir gazed into the distance, murmuring, "The obstacles are gone, and my preparations are complete. The spike pits in front of me are already camouflaged." He asked himself, "Shall I begin my hunt?" A few days later, at an iron fence marked with a skull and crossbones danger sign, Vikir coldly stepped into an unexplored zone. The atmosphere was dark, trees dead and withered. He observed closely, thinking, that side is unexplored territory. But all of this was once my backyard when I was still a scout. Looking ahead, a burning stench pricked his nose. Burnt roots. What is that? Burning dung? Something startled him slightly. He turned and exclaimed, "I found it. Indeed, a pile of burning dung." A sharp jaw emerged with flames, matching Vikir's deduction. Only one type of monster produces such excrement. He was facing a dreadful beast, one that had sickened him during his scouting days, But now he could not be happier to meet one. Nothing else but a hellhound. Its blazing body loomed above him. Hellhound. Danger level, B+. Size, 3 meters. A hound carrying the fire of hell in its jaws, a creature of calamity for anyone who encounters it. Even a single bite brings endless death. The sulphurous flames spewing from its eyes and mouth are born from the deepest pits of hellfire, unquenchable until its designated fuel living flesh is utterly consumed. Looking at the blazing hellhound before him, Vikier thought to himself, these demonic creatures are cloaked in the flames of hell, true hellhounds. He stood there with his sword strapped to his back, appearing calm. Before my regression, I was only able to fight a single one of these at the age of 18. Naturally, facing one head-on is far beyond what an 8-year-old like me should be able to do. Even so, Vikier smiled confidently. But I know a way for a child to defeat a hellhound. The boy and the beast lunged at each other. With his past experience, Vikier already knew the first weaknesses of a hellhound. Before the collision, he quickly slid down and darted aside, causing the beast to overshoot and twist its head awkwardly to track him. It took a moment before it could turn its whole body back around. The first weakness of hellhounds, they can only move in straight lines, and it takes them quite some time to change direction. The hellhound glared death at Vikier, confused at how he had shifted position so suddenly before impact. Vikier pulled out a small vial of water, smiled, and said, "The second weakness of hellhounds." He poured the water before himself and continued. For some reason, these demonic creatures cannot cross even the smallest trickle of water. The beast immediately circled around toward him, slowed in the process. Vikier leapt back swiftly and thought, it will still try to close in on me, that's when it will expose the fatal weakness all canine monsters share. By now, the hellhound was right in front of him, maw wide open, hellfire roaring inside. But just as Vikier had predicted, they always open their mouths when they charge. He flicked something from his hand and slipped to the side, avoiding the direct assault. Against such feral beasts, one must use cunning. From a distance, Vikier turned back. The hellhound snarled and leapt again. But then its eyes widened, its face contorting in discomfort. Vikier held a single cocoa bean in his hand, grinning coldly as the monster writhed on the ground. To canines, chocolate is deadly poison. The hellhound collapsed, frothing green smoke from its mouth. Vikier's voice rang out, and if it's a red cocoa bean, capable of producing 100 liters of chocolate from just one seed, then naturally, its effect on these beasts is even greater. Drawing his sword, he looked down with a killing gaze. These hellhounds cannot withstand chocolate at all. Raising the blade to finish it, he muttered, "First, it will ravage their heart and stomach organs protected by ribs too sturdy to pierce. So I must strike where there are no ribs." Vikier thrust his sword into the dying beast. It howled in agony, but was too poisoned to resist. The blade pierced its kidney. With a cold motion, he withdrew his sword, blood spurting forth. Black, smoking droplets dripped from the tip onto the creature's body, releasing a faint blue haze from the torn flesh. That haze flowed into Vikier when one slays a monster. Its experience or karmic essence is absorbed, strengthening the body. He swung the sword in a test strike, smiling. "It feels lighter already. At this rate, my power will rise swiftly. It won't be long before I match my grown self from my previous life." Gazing at the corpse, he wondered, how will Hugo react when an 8-year-old manages to slay a B-rank hellhound? Vikier smirked coldly. "With this, my place at the top is secure. Perhaps it's time to think about my reward." A vision of a chained book appeared before him, the reward he could not even dream of in his past life. Its true value remains unknown even now. As Vikier considered taking the creature's head, he heard silent footsteps, more hellhounds approaching. His eyes narrowed. Several of them emerged, snarling viciously. Still calm, Vikier smiled. So, they heard its howl and came to avenge their kin. He swung his sword, severing the fallen beast's head, and sneered, "What loyalty you have to each other." Holding the head aloft, he taunted, "Come then." I've plenty more cocoa beans for you." Suddenly, a pair of malevolent, oppressive eyes appeared, startling the hellhounds. Their sudden fear puzzled Vikir. Are they trembling before the aura of an 8-year-old child? Impossible, hellhounds never retreat, even unto death. He turned, and then he understood. Behind him loomed a massive 3-headed hound, exuding both the darkness and chill of hell itself. The Cerberus. Its enormous body radiated a sinister purple aura from each of its 3 heads. Vikir froze. By his knowledge, Cerberus was an A+ danger class beast. Why would such a creature, which should dwell on the 7th level, appear here? Then he noticed the long gashes across its back, blood flowing, and broken arrows embedded in its flesh. So, it has been hunted. Memories stirred. Beyond the mountain lay barbarian territory. If the barbarians chased it here, then this is my chance. His eyes gleamed with icy resolve. A wounded A+ hellbeast. I must slay it, even if I must unleash everything I have. Though he had hidden his true skills from the Baskerville clan, Vikir's swordsmanship had long reached the level of a master swordsman. His mastery of the Baskerville Third Fang was at the peak, far beyond what even adult hounds could achieve. Gripping his sword, he charged at the wounded Cerberus, slashing for one of its heads. But the beast was no easy prey. It counterattacked instantly. Vikir met it head-on, blade flashing. His crimson eyes burned with killing intent. I can do this. If it's a wounded Cerberus, I can kill it. Before regression, his sword technique had been refined to perfection. No wasted motion, only killing blows. Moreover, his body had been strengthened by the river Styx. His weapon was more than enough to harm Cerberus. His strikes wove together, slashing again and again. But then, the monster's eyes glowed fiercely, reflecting death's light. It showed no signs of retreat. It was only Vikir's wishful thinking. Cerberus's sudden counter shattered his sword, blood spurting from his shoulder. In a single lapse of caution, the beast's claws found him, flinging him violently through the air. He slammed into a tree, crying out in pain, coughing up blood. Cerberus, the guardian hound of the underworld. It despised not those who entered, but those who sought to escape. It dwelled in the deepest pit, the end of all souls. Among all canine monsters, it was the strongest of them all. Strongest. Vikir sat slumped against the base of a tree, unmoving for a moment. His face darkened. Then suddenly his eyes snapped open wide. His teeth clenched wordlessly. He looked toward the approaching Cerberus and thought, I lost consciousness after being struck by it. He felt the blood and pain coursing through his body and wondered, my whole left arm hurts. Is it broken? A claw mark had appeared along his arm, his torn sleeve exposing injured flesh. He could not even raise his left arm. His expression briefly startled. Across from him, the 3-headed beast rushed forward again, and Vikir thought, even with Cerberus wounded, for me to be only this injured, is this the blessing of the Styx? The monster lunged once more, its blow splintering the tree, but Vikir swiftly darted aside, silently giving thanks. Long live the Styx. His eyes grew tense, but if I keep taking hits like this, I will not survive. He watched the hound turn again, a desperate situation. Yet even in such times a seasoned hunter always finds the best option. The best I can do now is, of all strategies, flight is the best. With that thought he spun and fled, not daring a direct clash, and it immediately pursued him. He thought grimly, if not for its wounds I would already have been caught and torn to pieces. Perhaps I should thank those barbarians in the mountains. He spotted a fence ahead, realizing beyond it lay the outer boundary. He poured all his strength into leaping across. If I can reach there, I will make it. But if I am caught before then, I die. At the same time, the 3 sets of fangs roared and closed in. The shadow of man and beast streaked through the dark forest. Vikir raced anxiously, muttering inwardly, where is it? It must be near. At last he saw it, the place he had marked before. He ran with all his might, whispering to himself, just a bit more, just a bit more. At that very moment, as Cerberus's maws neared his body, Vikir's face tightened with fear, though he forced calm. His foot pressed down, bracing. Now. As Cerberus lunged, he sprang into the air, flipping forward a short distance. Its massive jaws gaped before him, ready to snap shut. But suddenly its paw pressed a hidden trap he had set. The great bulk of Cerberus began to tumble into a pit, while Vikier slid across the ground on the far side. He lay back gasping at the sky, relief flooding in. Staring at the writhing beast within the trap, Vikier sneered, "Welcome to the sword sieve, Cerberus." He sat up smiling, wiping his face, thinking, who would have thought the snare I made for hellhounds would capture Cerberus itself? The two side heads foamed green, the same poisoned effect as the hound's. After all, Cerberus was also a dog, and the bean essence coating my spearhead acts as toxin. The central head roared, eyes blazing. Vikier hefted a sharpened stake, preparing to hurl it, and said, "I suppose a high-class beast would not die from a single strike, right?" He hurled it with all his might, but shockingly, the stake failed to pierce its thick hide. The monster kept snarling, terrifying and savage. Vikier stood calm, counting silently, 1, 2. The beast dragged itself free of the pit, bleeding but advancing. He did not move, continuing, 3, 4. Cerberus roared, eyes fixed on him, jagged fangs bared, and 6 seconds passed. At the 7th, when it was face to face with him, its remaining head bellowed, spewing blue poisonous froth from its throat. Vikier wiped his face and exhaled in relief. Looking at the fallen colossal body, he murmured, "Exactly 7 steps, so the rumor was true." Remembering the stake, he said, "That wooden spear I threw was a bit different." He muttered, even a single bite should not have left it able to take 7 steps, but the spear was coated in blood serpent venom. Luckily I had kept it since childhood. He raised his hand to receive the aura flowing from the corpse and said, "I can feel the energy of Cerberus. It seems all 3 heads are dead now." Gazing at the massive carcass, he wondered, "How can I move this? The cause of death is obvious. The night guardians will soon suspect me." He pondered, "First there is something I must do." Cerberus, a gatekeeper beast, had the habit of guarding a domain. Surely there must be a dungeon nearby. A dungeon, a strange place full of treasures, and sometimes dwelling of powerful fiends. He took some of the beast's blood and smeared it over himself, thinking, if the gatekeeper is dead, the dungeon may be empty. If I mask my scent with that of Cerberus, I can avoid most encounters. He thought further, the humus, the dry leaves, broken branches, tracks and saliva, I will follow these signs back. Quietly he traced the trail left by the 3-headed hound. After a while, Vikier stood before a dark cave mouth exhaling malevolent breath. Here it is, the dungeon guarded by Cerberus. He entered and recalled, "I remember coming here before rebirth. I discovered it 10 years later, but it was empty then." He stood staring inward, but now was different. Amidst the rot, I can smell mana. This place has not yet been touched. He peered into the dungeon, swallowed by blackness, light failing to reach the end, deeper than I thought. Vikier smirked coldly, unable to hide the thrill and satisfaction of the dungeon about to be explored. He stepped inside and wondered, what treasures might await me here? Vikier quietly walked inside the dungeon, red aura energy radiating everywhere. He looked up at the rock wall and thought, there are quite a lot of ruby veins in many places along this wall. It seems this place is connected to Fangrid Mountain, a branch of Rouge et Le Noir Mountain, which is translated as the Red and Black Mountain. At the end of the tunnel, a dazzling light shone out. Vikier speculated, that must be the inside of the dungeon. He raised his hand to cover his face, closed one eye and tried to look towards it. Vikier stepped into the dungeon gate. In front of him was a large gem floating above a small pillar. He approached and said, "It glows inside the dungeon. It must be an artifact that radiates light by absorbing mana and channeling it into the ruby." Vikier was startled as he looked down at the base of the pillar. A dried-up skeleton was leaning against it with a piece of paper in front. He wondered, has someone been here before me? Vikier picked up the paper and observed injuries all over the body as if slashed randomly by a blade. The blood had long dried up. Looking at the skull turned to the side, he speculated, it seems it has been quite some time. Vikier lifted the paper and read its contents. At this moment, my name no longer matters, so it could be anything. I will call myself Cain. I find it unnecessary to taint this pure sheet of paper with my real name. Reading this, he pondered, this writing style has been passed down in the Baskerville clan for generations. Could this person also be a member of the Baskerville family? He continued to read, I am writing this because I want those who come after not to make the same mistakes as I did. The legend of the clan has told that this place is an ancient dungeon, and my brother Abel accidentally discovered it. We tried countless times to explore this dungeon. We defeated numerous monsters and reached this stone chamber, faced with a supreme riddle here. And this riddle trapped us for a very, very long time, for 3 whole years. At this point Vikier murmured, 3 years, they must have craved the treasure inside desperately. This supreme riddle must be somewhere in the dungeon. He then looked at the inscriptions beneath the pillar holding the large ruby and wondered, is that it? The question written there said, what enters as 1, but inside becomes 2, only when it is 1 can it leave. Vikier continued reading the paper. With the narrow understanding of the riddle my brother and I had, we thought long and hard, and we both came to the same conclusion. We are twins. When in our mother's womb we were 1, but when born we were separated into 2. That also meant that between the 2 of us, only 1 could leave with the treasure. Right. They decided to face each other in a fratricidal battle to find the treasure hidden behind the riddle. In the end, after a long and fierce fight, he killed his brother. A stab through the heart, and now only 1 remained in this place. But even so, nothing changed here at all. The 2 of them were now 1, but he still received nothing, which drove him insane. He looked down at his brother's corpse in agony. I killed my brother, I killed him, I killed him. After endless remorse, I decided to leave this place. If anyone is brave enough to reach here, I want to tell you one thing, leave this place immediately. All this place does is drive people mad with greed. There is nothing to gain in this damned cave. Vikier let the paper drift away and mocked. So in short, what he meant was, even if I overcame everything to reach here, there is no reward at all, but I am not a twin. He looked around the dungeon and thought, but I am not a twin. The riddle posed is still the same, which means Cain and Abel had solved it wrong. What enters as 1, but inside becomes 2. Only when it is 1 can it leave. What could that mean? The things here are connected together. The dungeon, the giant ruby, and the skeleton lying there. Vikier told himself, think, a dungeon that cannot be conquered does not exist. He looked down, suddenly realizing something. Vikier exclaimed, looking at his own shadow cast on the skeleton. He smiled. It seemed Vikier had found the answer, but did not dare to believe it. His lips murmured, impossible. Looking at the large glowing gem, he continued, so it is this. Cain and Abel were just unfortunate brothers, because there were 2 of them. They were trapped in their situation and could not solve the riddle. Vikier raised his hand, the dark tunnel contrasting with the shining stone chamber. The answer to the riddle was the dungeon itself. He stood there with his shadow stretching behind him. When we enter, we are 1 with the dark tunnel, but the moment we reach here, we become 2 because of the ruby's light. Vikier decisively shattered the ruby, then let it turn dark once more. The final area of the dungeon would be opened. He sneered confidently and said, the answer is my shadow. The ruby shattered and fell to the ground, radiating dark energy. Then, the fragments floated up, releasing dense spiritual energy into the pillar below. Vikier quietly stood there waiting for what the dungeon would bring after solving the riddle. His eyes lit up and he smiled brightly. So this is what the 2 brothers fought each other for. Something resembling a sword appeared above the riddle pillar. Vikier wondered, could this be the holy relic of the demon's lair? A sword with 3 glowing spots like 3 eyes in the center, exuding an aura of extreme evil and strangeness. Another warning appeared, only the bloodline of the Baskerville clan can draw Beelzebub. Reading these lines shocked Vikier into exclaiming, this is Beelzebub. This is the holy relic that can be found here. He had seen illustrations of the sword in a mythological book he read in his past life, the gluttonous demon fly, Beelzebub. In ancient mythology it never mentioned the great demons that ruled the lands. There were in total 7 calamities corresponding to the 7 deadly sins. To prevent those 7 calamities, the leaders of the 7 clans rose up to fight each demon of the deadly sins. At that time, the demon the Baskerville clan faced was the gluttonous demon fly, Beelzebub. And from then on, what remained of Beelzebub was sealed within the territory of the Baskerville clan, and the demonic energy Beelzebub emitted attracted monsters, or at least that was what the myth said, though no one believed it. However, the legend was true. In the future, this sword fell into the hands of demons and brought death to countless human warriors on the battlefield. Vikir sneered as he gripped the sword hilt and said, "But in this life, that will not happen again. Anyway, now it will belong to me." He tried to draw the sword. The aura from it surged unceasingly. The vicious dark aura from the sword invaded his hand, making Vikir scream. Then, it gradually seeped into the back of his hand and merged with his body. In just a moment, the fusion was almost complete. Vikir's face grimaced. Deathly demonic breath spread around. The long, sharp blade shot out from the back of his hand. Vikir clenched his fist in awe. A sword crystallized from what remained of the holy relic of a demon. Obtaining Beelzebub truly exceeds all expectations. He sneered, his deathly gaze blending with the eerie aura of Beelzebub, and said, "I wonder how much stronger I will become in this life. I look forward to it. I look forward." After obtaining the most precious thing in the dungeon, Vikir turned his head and wondered, "There is nothing else to take here. Should I go back?" Suddenly he felt dizzy. His vision blurred and his body staggered. Vikir sensed the growl of his stomach. His belly was rumbling loudly. His entire body lost strength and collapsed. His face twisted in confusion. What is this? Dizziness? No. Is it hunger? Beelzebub appeared on the back of his hand. It, along with his whole body, was trembling. He wondered, is it trying to tell me to feed it? Then Vikir held his stomach and tried to step out of the dungeon. His face showed worry. His head was spinning. This insane craving made me feel as if my stomach was being torn apart. It seems my sense of smell is more sensitive than usual because of hunger. There is something with an amazing scent. Beelzebub stretched its proboscis forward, as if dragging Vikir's whole body toward that direction. Its sharp proboscis pointed straight ahead. Vikir spoke. "You are trying to say that there is something edible over there." A moment later, he and Beelzebub returned to the place where the corpse of the 3-headed hellhound he had killed earlier lay. Before Vikir could regain his senses, it directly pierced its proboscis into the body of Cerberus and sucked blood continuously as if starved for a long time. He silently observed and thought, "The blood flowing through Beelzebub makes me feel like my stomach is revived again. I guess it has been starving for a long time." In the middle of the desolate forest, withered trees and barren land, could it also be because of Beelzebub's ravenous hunger? Vikir wondered, how much do I have to feed it to satisfy it? After draining all the blood of the 3-headed dog, it retracted its proboscis, letting out a satisfied sound. Its skill information appeared. The hunger of Beelzebub. The first slot was blood of the 3-headed hellhound rank B+. The remaining 2 slots were empty. Vikir was startled as he looked at the blood sword in his hand and wondered. This is Beelzebub's unique skill. The hunger of Beelzebub. It is said it can turn the opponent's skill into its own. It can absorb unlimited skills, and those absorbed will be completely annihilated. He looked at the dried corpse of Cerberus and said, "But I guess there must be a maximum limit of skills I can absorb because this is a corpse. The blood of the 3-headed dog. A skill that makes even the smallest scratch bleed a horrifying amount." Vikir was startled by a thought. Wait, if I can obtain this skill. While lost in thought, something stirred within the corpse of the 3-headed dog. Beelzebub appeared again with its bloodlust, thrusting its sharp proboscis downward, emanating a vicious aura that Vikir could not stop. He hurriedly exclaimed, "Wait." It continued sucking the blood of something. He could only scratch his head and sigh. You cannot eat everything. It will be hard to explain when they inspect it later because the body will be completely damaged. Vikir was speechless, letting Beelzebub gorge itself for now. After a while, he tapped on it and ordered it to stop. Now all 3 slots had skills. First was Cerberus Flame rank A+. Next was blood of the hellhound rank B+, and finally rapid regeneration of brown rat rank F. Seeing the strange skill, Vikier wondered, rapid regeneration. So it also ate the brown rat corpse beneath Cerberus. Holding the rat in his hand, he smiled in satisfaction. But obtaining flame from Cerberus was the great harvest. With the skill I absorbed from the hellhound, a person will die if hit by this skill. The feeling is even more terrifying than being burned alive. Vikier looked at the corpse before him and sighed. I have already prepared the monstrous creature for the practical exam, so now I just need to relax until the evaluation ends. The scene shifted to some time later. The young hounds of Baskerville returned after completing the practical exam. The evaluation continued afterwards, and the corpses of the monstrous creatures that the young hounds captured were turned into shields, swords, necklaces, and were returned as trophies. And among the corpses of the monstrous creatures, one young hound brought back shocked the Baskervilles present. Hugo sat there. After hearing the report, he could not believe his ears and asked again, "Who caught what?" Butler John held the paper in his hand and reported, "Young Master Vikier van Baskerville, 8 years old, by chance passed through an unexplored area during the exam and hunted a Cerberus, a dangerous monster of rank A+. The family head still did not believe those words and immediately asked again, "You are talking about the 3-headed Cerberus highly rated by the night guards our order once faced?" John replied, "I was informed that it had been injured earlier by barbarian tribes and had been poisoned." Hugo continued to ask, "What kind of poison is strong enough to bring down a Cerberus, and how in the world did it get poisoned?" The image of Vikier appeared in the butler's mind. He replied, "Nothing else was recorded in the hunting log. I tried to ask young master about it, but he said he was tired and returned to the dormitory so." Seeing him hesitate, Hugo understood the matter, stroked his chin and smiled with admiration. This boy is cunning, knowledge is power, and power is value. The butler added, "To be honest, I was also very surprised, thinking that such talent came from one with the name Van, and not La or Lee." Hugo interrupted, "You do not understand me." John confusedly asked again, "Forgive me, Lord." Hugo smiled, "I am different from the previous family heads. I do not care about bloodline when I raise a hound. It does not matter to me whether it comes from royal family or servant. All I care about is talent and determination." The warm sunlight shone into the room through the window, along with the voice of the Baskerville family head, as I said. Even the weak may come from a good bloodline, and the opposite. You understand what I mean? The butler thought to himself, he is aware of the second son who is training in a remote place. Then he spoke, "I am sorry." Among the great buildings of the family, Hugo waved it off. "It is fine, but I need something to improve my mood. Call the boy here." John immediately replied, "I will call young Master Vikier." A while later, he appeared in his father's room, standing there with an innocent smile hiding the calculations inside. Hugo asked directly, "I heard that you killed a Cerberus in the practical exam. How did you do it?" Vikier honestly, "I fed it chocolate to kill it." The conversation continued. The family head asked, "Chocolate?" Vikier's voice sounded. "Chocolate is actually a deadly poison to hellhounds." Hugo nodded. "I see. That is why you asked for chocolate." He replied, "Yes." John stood there listening and thought. They only ask and answer repeatedly without even greeting each other. Is this really supposed to be a father-son conversation? Things did not end there. Vikier continued to receive questions from the family head. "I heard that you did not answer the butler when he asked specifically about the hunt. Why was that?" The seemingly innocent but deeply calculating answer of his, "Because he is not my master." This made Hugo feel interested and asked further, "Then who is?" Vikier replied, "Because I am a member of the family. The family head is my master." "Who else could it be?" Hugo smiled. "You have learned very well." He stood there listening to the family head rewarding him. "As a reward, the corpse of the creature you captured will be yours alone. And since you ranked first, I will grant you a wish." Vikier rejoiced inside. "I have been waiting for this. With it, I can obtain what I want." His wish startled both the family head and the butler. "I wish to enter the sacred library of 10,000 tomes." The Sacred Library of 10,000 Tomes, a colossal library in the deepest place of the main fortress of the Baskerville Order. The library is one of the largest in the Empire. Hugo looked at his son seriously and asked, "The Sacred Library of 10,000 Tomes? Do you know that only the family head and deputy family head and corps members are allowed in there?" Vikier pretended to answer, "If I am not permitted, I will give up," he thought to himself. "I guess I have no choice but to sneak in later." But Hugo's answer made his eyes widen in shock. Vikier could not believe what he had just heard. "You may enter." The family head smiled. "In the deepest part of the library, I want you to read the Baskerville Sword Art, the 6th form, which is placed in the 6th restricted section." This made Vikier slightly worried as he thought, "The Baskerville Sword Art, the 6th form? Hugo is allowing an illegitimate child to read that sword art. There has never been a case where an illegitimate child with the middle name Van has read beyond the 4th form. I must not get too agitated. After all, it is only the 6th form." Currently, Hugo has reached the 7th form in his previous life. He could already display the 9th form. Vikier still had not forgotten the insults he had received for being Hugo's illegitimate child. In this life, I will surpass Hugo. Because he could have the sacred tome of swordsmanship containing the pure true essence of Baskerville. It was discovered later in his previous life, and was written by the first family head, the one who destroyed the 7 calamities, and the one who would hand the sacred tome of swordsmanship to Vikier was Hugo le Baskerville. He would be the one to give it to him. At this moment, the family head folded his hands in front of him and smiled. "I look forward to it. Good luck." Vikier politely bowed and replied, "Thank you, sir. I will do my best to meet your expectations." In his heart he thought, "And you will not know the value of what you are giving away. What you are giving away." Transitioning to a strict room, 2 Baskerville guards were standing there watching with weapons on their backs. At that moment, a familiar footstep quietly approached them. Vikier stood in the middle of the corridor looking straight ahead and sighed. "The Holy Scripture Library. This is the first time I have ever seen this place with my own eyes." He slid his hand over the bookshelf and read the books on it. Iron Fang Crushing Sword Technique, Shattered Demon Fang Sword Technique, Penetrating Fang Sword Technique, Twin Piercing Leopard Fang Sword Technique, Wisdom Fang Sword Technique. Every scripture containing the sword techniques I wanted to learn before regression is already here. In the Baskerville family, no matter how much mana an illegitimate child possessed, they were not allowed to learn sword techniques beyond the 4th fang. This was an internal policy of the family, to ensure that the pawns meant to be hunting dogs could never bear fangs threatening the descendants of the clan, the ones who held the role of master. Vikier stepped toward a book bound in chains and locked with a large sturdy padlock. He looked at it and asked, "Is this it?" Holding the key in his hand, Vikier said, "Unbelievable that Hugo actually proposed a sword technique of the 9th fang for me. If it was before regression, not even in a dream would I have thought of being allowed to do this." He placed the key into the lock and turned it, muttering, "Anyway, I am sure Hugo allowed it because he thinks that an 8-year-old boy memorizing this in just one day is impossible." However, before regression, Vikier had researched the theories and assumptions behind sword techniques from the 1st to the 4th fang like a madman, to the extent that he could already predict with fair accuracy the theories behind the 5th fang which he had never learned before. Vikier added, "After drawing out the 4th fang, I once had to shatter my mana circuit, and that was the reason why I could not use the 5th fang." The Baskerville swordsmanship. Each level was classified by the number of fangs. So level 1 was 1 fang, level 2 was 2 fangs. It was distinctive with a dark crimson aura running along the sword when the fangs appeared. Vikier smiled, happily opening the pages. "I do not care about the 6th fang. I came here today with another goal." He walked toward the 2 guards. "What I desire is a level far beyond that." Seeing him, one of them spoke. Young Master Vikier." The other asked, "Have you already left?" They tried to explain so that Vikier would not waste time on other matters. "The scriptures on swordsmanship go deeper inside. If you intend to leave just to get something forgotten, then let us fetch it for you." He coldly replied, "I am done here." Hearing that, one was surprised and asked again, "Done already?" You could still read more before leaving, Vikir suggested. I plan to skim a few more scriptures before leaving, so just leave me alone and return to your duty. Then he turned and prepared to step up the stairs to the next floor. The two guards whispered, "There is nothing up there but random miscellaneous scriptures." The other replied, "If it were me, I would read the ones kept deeper inside." Their voices reached Vikir's ears. Does he not understand their value because he is too young? Meanwhile, he ignored them. Think whatever you want. Walking toward a nearby section, Vikir thought, there is no way you could know. Among those dusty miscellaneous scriptures lies a treasure waiting to be unearthed. He walked past the shelves and glanced over. Vikir halted. One book caught his eye. His eyes gleamed. Holding the old worn book in his hand with scribbles on the first page, he whispered, "Found it. The name of the book is Hidden Fang." Vikir looked at it and smiled. Hidden Fang. It is definitely this, without a doubt. A simple scripture of the first Fang that even the children of the Baskerville clan did not bother to read, because all of its middle pages had been torn out. No wonder it was classified as a lowly, trivial scripture. His eyes glowed with excitement. However, I know the true value of this book. Before regression, the hunting dog squad Vikir belonged to found a strange relic on the border of the Red-Black Mountain. It was a piece of paper about swordsmanship, a single page torn from a scripture. A single page from a sword technique scripture written in the handwriting of the Baskerville clan. Sensing something abnormal, Hugo ordered men to search the entire Holy Scripture library to find the original book. That book was a scripture called Hidden Fang. This scripture was written by an ancestor of the Baskerville family himself, detailing the method to reach the 10th Fang of the Baskerville family. Obsessed with the thought of the 10th Fang, Hugo unleashed the Baskerville hunting dogs, ordering them to find the remaining 6 pages. Knowing that the remaining pages were carefully hidden in the other 7 great families, Hugo almost declared war, unleashing the dogs to attack anyone who resisted. After countless hunting dogs sacrificed their lives, finally the remaining pages were found and offered to Hugo. And the reward for all of that was... Vikir hesitated as he remembered Hugo's gaze when he praised him for doing well. Returning to reality, his face showed hatred and anger as he muttered, "Truly a foolish life." Thanks to it, Hugo surpassed the 7th Fang and reached the 9th Fang, using the blood and flesh of the hunting dogs as stepping stones. But in this life that will not happen. The hunting dog who had tracked and offered all those pages was Vikir. He still clearly remembered the information on the missing pages. But the reason he could never go beyond the 4th Fang was because he had never touched the scripture containing the original writings. The scripture recorded these lines: "The first step of the 10th Fang is the same as the essence contained within the 1st Fang. At the moment one displays aggression when drawing the sword and forming an arc along the blade. Every sword stroke ends with the same limit." Vikir finished reading and exclaimed, "No wonder. Most people would treat this book as a lowly thing full of nonsense." The 8-year-old boy sat there deep in thought. But when the missing pages were placed back, the information that once seemed like arrogant nonsense became a riddle forming the strokes of a beautiful masterpiece. Vikir sat there reading the scripture intently and thought, "Before regression, I was at the 4th Fang in swordsmanship and a high-ranked graduate among Aura swordsmen. I will become as strong as before regression at the age of 15. Time passed, night fell, and the moonlight gently shone through the window. The next morning, the sun rose, casting soft rays into the library. Inside, Vikir was still sitting there diligently reading the Hidden Fang scripture. After a while, he closed it and said, "That is enough." He looked at the dawn and was surprised. "I have focused the entire day, but thanks to that, I have memorized the book to the point I could even recite it backwards." Vikir stood up and looked around. "I cannot sense the presence of the guards." He closed his eyes thinking, "I may not reach the 10th Fang with this child's body, but I can reach the 5th Fang, something I could not achieve in my previous life." Vikir stood there emitting a crimson aura. In front of him was a white phantom, both seemingly standing in the sea of consciousness. Vikir began channeling mana into his hands, his eyes filled with death. He slashed across the phantom. The 1st Fang of the Baskerville family immediately followed the 2nd Fang and the 3rd Fang, creating deadly strikes that shattered the phantom. The fourth fang was sharp interlacing strikes leaving no escape. And finally, Vikir's eyes flashed like lightning with determination. Before regression, he had lived a shallow life. He could have graduated as a high-ranked swordmaster after hard work. But Vikir was scorned by the family because he could not learn the proper sword techniques. The only reason he could not reach the fifth fang or higher was because he was an illegitimate child. Vikir thought as he charged, "I will not live such a life again." After striking, he focused on the phantom before him. It turned into Hugo's face, the one who decided to execute him in his past life, the one he hated the most. Then the fifth fang created thin but razor-sharp strikes across that face. Afterwards, the phantom shattered, murderous sword aura bursting forth. Vikir clenched his teeth, furious after unleashing the move. He gently stood in the second-floor hallway of the library. Vikir looked at his small hands and breathed heavily. He said, "Still lacking a little, but I can already use the fifth fang." He clenched both hands in joy, a warm feeling from deep within, a choking feeling. Vikir wanted to cry tears of happiness after reaching the fifth fang. He looked around in confusion and wondered, is there no sword here? Throughout the history of the Baskerville family, the fangs of a young hunting dog were growing faster than ever, and those fangs were now aimed at the throat of its very master. After training, Vikir stood there and said, "I have successfully drawn out the fifth fang. If I can enhance my mana now, I will reach the milestone of strength I had before regression." He smiled. The mana was still steadily increasing. This time through enlightenment, it would grow in multiple dimensions. Looking at the blazing red mana in his hand, he thought to himself, "This flow, aura liquefaction, is the sign of a swordmaster. It seems I have advanced from an elite high-grade swordsman to a low-grade swordmaster, a level I could only reach at 30 years old in my previous life. Yet now I have achieved it at only 8. Swordmaster is a completely different rank compared to elite swordsman. Thanks to aura transforming into a liquid state, the density of aura is enhanced, and the ability to shift states is less restricted." Vikir was satisfied. "I also have obtained a sword technique better than what I used before regression. This sword technique will not stop at the fifth fang. It could even reach the 10th fang. It holds limitless potential. The fang strike I learned before allowed me to grow stronger quickly, but it restricted growth limits. Compared to it, Hidden Fang is a perfect sword technique, combining both offense and defense and having no growth ceiling." Vikir placed the old book on the windowsill where sunlight was shining in and thought, "If I focus on learning it, I might even face an intermediate swordmaster. I would have a 100% chance of winning if I assassinate, 50% if I fight directly." He thought of the patriarch and wondered, the question is, how much should I reveal to Hugo? Vikir's revealed strength could not be too great nor too small. He needed to give him something he wanted, in order to gain as many benefits as possible from him. Vikir took out a magnifying glass from his pocket. Then he placed it there to focus sunlight and set the book aflame. Vikir looked over and smirked coldly in satisfaction. Hidden Fang would be burned to ashes. Watching the book burn, he said, "With this, the chance for Hugo and his hounds to reach the 10th fang is gone forever, of course, except for me." The 2 guards had returned, looked over at Vikir and asked, "What is that smell?" They immediately stepped closer and asked, "Young Master Vikir, what have you done?" He feigned confusion with the half-burned book beside him and answered, "Sorry, I accidentally set the book on fire because I carelessly left the magnifying glass on it. I will go to the butler if it needs to be reported." Hearing this, the 2 guards broke out in sweat and replied, "Heavens, young master, you need not feel guilty for this. It is our fault for not paying attention to you, young master. Moreover, fortunately only 1 book was burned." Vikir stepped forward before them and added, "Right, those books are messy anyway. Aren't the knights busy with conflict against the Morgue family at the gem mines? You surely don't have time to worry about trivial matters like this, so it is best we pretend it never happened." The 2 immediately understood the situation and nervously replied, "If the young master can overlook this, then..." Not letting them finish, he turned around and said, Then keep this secret between us. You must be very busy. Sorry for wasting your time. Both answered in unison. Yes, young master. Unwittingly turned into tools of secrecy without realizing. The two guards even smiled as they looked at his back and praised, young Master Vikir. He truly is a good person. He even thinks about the feelings of servants like us. Vikir smiled, enjoying the compliments behind him. Truly a respectable young man. Scene shifts to the hallway in the main house of the clan. The chandelier lights shone down, brightening the space. Inside the room, Hugo sat with the butler always by his side, looked at his son and asked, "How was it? Have you attained enlightenment?" Vikir answered, "A little." Hearing his reply, Hugo stroked his beard and laughed in delight, asking, "What did you feel and realize in the library?" Vikir rubbed his chin and vaguely said, "Something warm and sharp, but also soft like waves. I felt something like that." The answer shocked the two older men. John blurted out, "Could that be aura?" Aura is proof that one has truly stepped into the world of swordsmanship. Even prodigies who trained without pause would need at least 15 years of age to enter the realm of lower-grade swordsman mastery. Hearing this, Hugo was a bit taken aback and pondered, "What am I thinking? The boy is only 8. Then he asked, "Can you show this father of yours what you just spoke of?" Vikir smiled innocently and answered, "Of course." Scene shifts to the arena area, a battleground at the center surrounded by stands. The children of the clan stood there whispering noisily about the upcoming event. On the ground stood none other than Vikir with a sword in hand, confidently smiling. The butler John stood worried beside and asked, "Patriarch, is it all right to test the young master's skills like this?" Hugo replied, "I will only give him a suitable beast." A beast. John had just finished speaking when the iron gate slowly rose. Hugo answered, "Yes, I have starved this monster to make it more sensitive." Vikir still stood waiting. A monster was brought out tightly bound with iron chains. A retainer of the clan was leading it out. It was an orc, danger level C. Behind the iron muzzle was the ferocious face of the beast. The Baskerville children gasped in horror. An orc. Isn't it too much to make an 8-year-old fight an orc? Usually one must be 15 to have the strength to do this. The small Vikir stood before the huge orc, hearing the whispers from the stands. If something happens, surely the Protector Knights would not stand idle. Above, Hugo gestured for the handler to unbind the orc. The iron chains were immediately removed and fell from the monster. The orc with sharp tusks, drool dripping, its deadly eyes fixed on the small boy before it. It roared after long starvation and captivity. Then it immediately charged at Vikir. He still appeared innocent, snorted, preparing himself. Aiming and adjusting, he slashed his sword straight into the orc's arm. Blood spurted out. Witnessing this, his peers in the stands widened their eyes in shock. The orc too widened its eyes, but because it saw its arm gone. Not letting it recover, Vikir swiftly aimed for its leg. A sharp slash severed the orc's leg. It immediately staggered, then collapsed, while he coldly turned his head. The orc lay there howling in pain, blood pouring endlessly. Vikir looked at it thinking, it is shocked seeing itself bleed for the first time. Its rare orc skill, super regeneration, did not trigger. He recalled the hellhounds. There was no way a rank C monster could stand against a rank B+ beast like a hellhound. Position number 2, hemorrhage. Hellhound B+. Whispers rose in the stands, mostly astonishment. That truly is an 8-year-old boy. How did he do that with that body? He did not even use mana. How could it be? Similarly, Hugo had been watching, fingers interlocked, astonished, speechless. Vikir looked up and thought, he believes I have not yet shown him what I realized in the library. Then I will show him, as he wishes. Hugo's suspicious, calculating gaze was fixed on his illegitimate son. Even the butler, who was always calm now, was excited. John Barrymore exclaimed, "That is Aura Blade." Vikir smiled and infused mana into the sword in his hand, his body and the blade now covered in blazing red aura. The aura flow running along the sword, exactly what he wanted everyone to see. The orc struggled to rise, blood still gushing from its wounds, but its eyes still gleamed with ferocity and rage. Vikir, after using aura, immediately rushed forward, slashing at the orc. A patriarch like Hugo witnessing this could not help but be shocked. Unable to keep calm, his hand clenched the armrest. The thick dark red liquid surrounded Vikier. John spoke. That is the aura of a low-grade elite swordsman. Congratulations, patriarch. The peerless genius of this generation has appeared. Hugo asked in disbelief. Do you really think so? The butler calmly replied. Even if you searched all families in the empire, you would never find a genius like this. The patriarch's voice rang out. Stop. Vikier stood there listening to the comments. Look closely. There is something strange about the orc. Pardon me. The orc's special ability is super regeneration. But this orc continues to bleed. Hugo smirked. The boy only won because the orc was too weakened. But having long served in this clan, John knew well and muttered to himself, can't he be more honest and show happiness? Suddenly Vikier's voice rose from below, startling Hugo. Wait, father. He smiled boldly and asked, is there one stronger than the orc? Stronger than the orc? Vikier's question made the children of his age look at each other in astonishment. Standing there, he thought to himself, it would be best if I revealed just enough power. If I am lucky, my achievement will be recognized, and I will have the chance to separate from Hugo. I might be sent to the wilderness, or perhaps recruited into the academy. Up on the stands, the expressions of the family head and the butler also showed surprise at his request. Hugo smiled, delighted. It seems the orc we had to go to such a distant land to capture was not enough to satisfy my son's hunger. What Vikier said makes sense. The boy is still at an age where he needs real combat experience. Then he said to John, Butler, it seems when we subdued the barbarians recently, I captured something for experimentation, didn't I? John replied, yes, there is indeed one left. A ferocious monster, with red eyes exhaling hunger. Hugo's voice rang out. It seems very sensitive from having not been fed for so long. Bring it here. The faces of the Baskerville children stayed the same, eyes wide and mouths agape. Even Vikier, a child with the soul of a past life, let out a sound of surprise. Before him was a giant troll, also bound by countless chains, its head somewhat small, but its body immensely large. It looked down, growling, drool dripping from its mouth, its thick neck straining downward. Vikier's eyes were fixed on the beast as he raised his voice to ask, Father, may I begin at once? Hugo replied without hesitation, yes. As soon as he declared, go, the chains on the troll were immediately released. Unable to wait any longer, Vikier rushed toward the savage beast, seeking to seize the advantage. But the troll was not to be underestimated. It roared and raised its fist, preparing for impact. A tremendous punch struck the ground, a loud crash resounding as dirt and stone flew everywhere. Yet with his agility, Vikier had already leapt onto its back without anyone noticing, delivering a slash. The result, however, was not as expected. He frowned and clicked his tongue. The cut had caused no damage to the troll's thick skin. Vikier decided to jump back to create distance. The children watching cried out, too close, there was an opening, why didn't he attack? Hugo, observing from above, chuckled and offered praise, a wise decision. He continued, the troll's regeneration is remarkably high, so unless you can deal a fatal blow in one strike, you are only wasting energy. The master's warning coincided with the monster raising its fist. Vikier swiftly leapt to evade the massive arm pounding down. Therefore, to hunt a troll, one must have a strategy. Though its body was immense, hunger had weakened it, and repeated ineffective attacks left it panting heavily. The children exchanged glances. He dodges every strike. Is he trying to restrain the troll? Can an 8-year-old truly have such judgment? Then this must be a real prodigy. Even just avoiding blows was exhausting. Vikier stood there panting, thinking, this thing is rather slow, so I don't feel pressured, but I need to put on a convincing show. After its pause, the troll roared again, its eyes flashing with a deadly red light as it charged. Vikier calculated, I could easily kill something like this if I revealed my true strength, but that would complicate things. I need to kill it as naturally as possible. The best way is to use the troll's own force against it when it attacks. Sword aura cuts appeared across its body, blood spraying out. With that thought, Vikier, eyes blazing red and aura enveloping him, passed by, leaving wounds across the beast. He stood calmly as the massive troll collapsed to its knees behind him. On its shoulder was a deep slash, its arm nearly severed. It howled in pain, blood flowing endlessly, clutching its wounded shoulder and grimacing. Outside the arena came the voices of the spectators. The troll has been slashed. Still, it will heal unless it was a finishing blow. Some raised their voices. Just as I thought. You cannot kill a troll with only the first fang of Baskerville swordsmanship. But for an 8-year-old to achieve this much is impressive. Vikier glanced at the wound on its shoulder as it slowly healed and thought, indeed the first fang cannot pierce the troll's thick hide. If I used Beelzebub's hemorrhage skill, all I'd need to do is wait and it would die, but that would be meaningless. Seeing his son hesitate, Hugo spoke. You may stop. If you continue it will be dangerous. So, Vikier immediately cut him off with determination. I am about to succeed. His eyes focused intently on the troll as he calculated the best way to defeat it while making an impression without revealing too much. He covered with words, I think if I fight a little more, I will realize something. Hearing his son's conviction, Hugo replied, if you cannot bring it down in the next strike, you will abandon the fight. Hugo could say no more. With the master's command to continue, the troll roared savagely, veins bulging on its small head. Vikier raised his sword before him, channeling ferocious aura. How much should he reveal? The answer was already decided. What Vikier wanted others to see was the vision of himself awakening and advancing during combat, and so he charged straight at the bloodthirsty troll. Suddenly, the troll bellowed to the heavens, its eyes wide and glowing. Vikier stood there, a blazing red vortex swirling around him, 2 deadly eyes and 2 fangs manifesting, a cold gaze and a triumphant smile. As the troll lunged, the 2 fangs, sharp as blades, pierced its body, vicious aura spreading. He thought, I look forward to Hugo's reaction after seeing this. With the momentum, he delivered a decisive slash. Blood sprayed, and the troll's head flew through the air. Butler John stood frozen in astonishment, mouth agape. The Baskerville children were shocked and horrified. In the Baskerville family's iron blood swordsmanship, a person's life followed a formula. Around the age of 15, one could infuse mana into a sword. At that time, most hounds would learn the first fang of Baskerville swordsmanship. But for the first time in Baskerville history, an 8-year-old had received what his peers attained at 18. The second fang, an anomaly, was born. Vikier stood there pretending to look at his hand in surprise. He scratched his head and smiled innocently, saying, I won. Hugo's face darkened. For the first time in history he was witnessing a genius son. The head of a great house could not maintain his usual composure. Looking down at the arena where the small boy stood, he wondered, what have we just witnessed? The scene shifted to a week later in the Baskerville family dining hall. Vikier sat there, spooning small bites. He muttered, no matter how many times I eat this random stew, I can never get used to it. Then he glanced at the other children and let out a small sound. Watching them each go in different directions, trying to sit as far from him as possible, Vikier thought, they have been keeping their distance since that day. Perhaps this is normal in Baskerville, where strength is everything. He smiled, recalling. Hugo's bewilderment was truly satisfying. At that time, even with the butler's constant announcements, he remained stunned. Master. Young Master Vikier has already returned to his room. Master. Master. The power he revealed publicly was the second fang of Baskerville, the power of a mid-level proficient swordsman. Vikier's true strength was the 5th fang of Baskerville, rather weak, about equal to that of a low-level swordmaster. He looked at Beelzebub and thought, if I include the troll skill I acquired, I must be stronger than an ordinary great swordsman. Slot 3, Troll's Super Regeneration C rank. While Vikier closed his eyes in contemplation, I do crave food more since acquiring Beelzebub. Behind him familiar figures silently appeared. They were the Baskerville trio, the future tridents of the family. Vikier's red eyes glared at them as he wondered, what do these bastards want? He asked softly, was I too lenient with you before? The 3 brothers stammered hastily, no, not at all. We just wanted to say that when you killed Cerberus and the troll, you looked so cool. Hearing this, Vikir immediately spat out his food. The trio quickly asked, "Are you all right? Are you okay? Are you fine?" Vikir lowered his head, thinking, "What is this? Are they trying to play a double-faced role, or are they trying to trick me?" Clenching his fists, face twisted in discomfort. Goosebumps are not pleasant at all. Maybe I should just hit them first and think later. Suddenly, Butler John leaned close to Vikir's ear and called, "Young Master Vikir." Startled, he looked up and exclaimed, "Butler Barrymore." Adjusting his glasses, John called again, "Young Master, you will need to quickly meet with the Master." His announcement made Vikir momentarily stiffen, his eyes widening in speechless surprise. At this moment, outside the castle of the Baskerville family, a procession of men and horses was moving in. The flag of the Morgue family fluttered on top of the carriage. Hugo sat there with his arms crossed, his face stern but without looking straight ahead, when a voice came from the other side. "It has been a long time." It was Adolphe Morgue, the vice-head of the Morgue family, who smiled and continued, "Lord Hugo still looks the same. I hope this year's annual event will not end with many issues." Hearing this, Hugo replied, "This joint training usually ends without much happening, right?" Adolphe retorted, "Last year both families had people seriously injured. If that is not a problem, then what is?" Hugo felt a little guilty and responded, "Just a small scratch that became a serious injury. It seems the descendants of the Morgue family exaggerated far too much." Adolphe did not yield and countered, "Perhaps because our Morgue family is a prestigious and refined one." The two men, representatives of two families, faced each other, nominally in exchange but with little joy, the prestigious magician family Morgue and the iron-blood swordsman family Baskerville. At first, these two families were not in such conflict. Magic and swordsmanship were supposed to complement each other. Words of the Emperor 2 generations ago. According to the Emperor's command, the Baskerville and Morgue families began joint training. Only children aged 8 to 15 could participate, and the annual event of both families began in a very good atmosphere. But at some point, disputes arose, sovereignty issues over a ruby mine between Baskerville and Morgue, and the relationship between the two family heads turned sour. Yet due to the Emperor's orders, joint training had to continue. Therefore, it was not the Morgue family head, but his younger brother Adolphe who began to meet with the Baskervilles as vice representative. He turned and asked, "Oh right, I heard that a rising star has appeared in the Baskerville family. A once-in-a-century genius from Baskerville would be a great fortune for the Empire." Hugo smiled faintly, closed his eyes, and bowed his head slightly in reply. "This is not something you should concern yourself with." The reaction of the Baskerville family had made Adolphe uneasy as he thought. This venomous snake actually reacted when his son was praised. That is rare indeed. He then turned his head toward the doorway and said loudly, "We might as well call this double fortune, as a genius has also appeared in our Morgue family. Come now, Camus, enter and give your greetings." The figure of a red-haired girl in elegant attire appeared at the doorway, her small feet stepping confidently forward. Hugo turned his gaze to observe the so-called genius Adolphe spoke of. After the girl sat down, Adolphe placed his hand on her shoulder and introduced, "This is my sister's daughter. Her name is Camus." Then he looked at her and said, "Child, you should greet the family head, shouldn't you?" But Camus remained silent, instead showing a sharp and aggressive attitude, questioning, "Sir, are you the thief who stole the ruby mine from us?" She stretched out her hand and added, despite Hugo's surprise, "Please return it to us, that ruby mine." Hearing this, the Baskerville family head's eyes flashed with a red glow of death as he asked, "Thief?" Realizing the seriousness, Adolphe quickly turned to his niece and shouted, "You brat, what nonsense are you saying?" However, Camus did not change. She continued, "But that is what Uncle said. You said that despicable bearded man stole the ruby mine from us like a thief." He immediately denied, "When did I ever say that?" But Camus directly accused, "You said it in the carriage, before I got down, about 1 hour and 42 minutes ago." Hugo's fury darkened his face as he clenched his teeth and repeated, "A despicable bearded man, like a thief." Adolphe tried to explain, It seems there has been some misunderstanding, But Hugo changed his expression, clutching his head as he responded. What would a foolish little puppy know? You need not try to justify the Morgue family's teaching methods to me. The girl did not stop. She shouted again, return the ruby to me. I cannot even conduct my research because of the lack of ruby. Adolf could not believe his niece would react so fiercely. He could only panic and call out her name. Hearing this, it seemed the pride of a great family head had been touched. Hugo raised his hand to cover his face, glaring in rage. Enough. It seems the Morgue family does not teach things like manners to its descendants. Adolf anxiously raised his hand to stop him. What are you saying to a child? While Camus still displayed an innocent face. He added, could it be that the holy sword of the Empire intends to oppress an 8-year-old child? Hugo frowned and clicked his tongue. I suppose the Morgue family does not teach their children not to covet what belongs to others either. A voice from outside drew both Adolf and Camus's attention. Vikier, with a confident face, walked in, followed by the chief butler John, who spoke. Sir, I have brought young Master Vikier. Adolf looked out and wondered. That boy is the rising star of Baskerville. Then, looking at his niece, Camus had already disappeared from her seat. She now stood opposite Vikier and asked, Hey, what did you just say? Adolf's voice called her name. Hearing it, Vikier was slightly surprised and thought, Camus, impossible. The girl continued to question, what is with that vile expression? Vikier wondered to himself. The queen of the Morgue family, could this be Camus Morgue as a child? Even among countless supreme magicians of the prestigious magic family, she was called the genius of geniuses. At her peak she conquered all the monsters and savages of the mountain Le Rouge et Le Noir, burning them into blood and ashes. Her name spread far and wide. He thought further, not only that, her beauty enchanted the aristocracy to the point of manipulating the royal family. She was called the representative of the regime. However, that was a story of a far future. For now she was just an 8-year-old girl. Camus asked repeatedly, why is the ruby mine yours? It belongs to us. Vikier countered with the tone of an old man. You went through so much effort only to come here and make a fuss like a child. His words startled Adolf. Reasoning so sharp could hardly be believed to come from a child. On the other side, Camus burned with rage, her whole body aflame as she asked, did you just say fuss? Vikier smiled calmly and replied, that is right. You are making a fuss right now. The girl immediately summoned icy air and declared, then I will teach you why that ruby mine belongs to the Morgue family, in a way so simple even your dog-brained mind can understand. Vikier remained utterly calm, one hand in his pocket waiting for Camus to demonstrate, and remarked, this seems amusing. Immediately, images of ice castles appeared before everyone. Some looked surprised and then focused to hear the presentation about to begin. Camus pointed at the ice model and said, now, I will try to make even a fool like you understand. Vikier's face turned blank as he thought, an ice model? I thought we were going to fight or something. Camus pointed to a black hole in the model and said, first, the border between Morgue and Baskerville, also known as the Joint Security Area. Surely you know that the mine here produces high-grade rubies. She continued her reasoning. The problem is that the entrance to this mine lies on Morgue's surface territory, while the underground section lies in Baskerville's territory. As you can see, the mine's structure prevents Baskerville from mining rubies by themselves, which means the ruby mine should belong to us, the Morgue family. Camus went on, however, your family insisted that we trespassed onto your land and interfered with mining. Furthermore, you rejected our proposal to lease the relevant land. Hearing Camus's arguments, Adolf stroked his beard and looked at Hugo with a mocking tone. My niece is truly eloquent, while Hugo appeared slightly displeased. Now it was Vikier's turn to rebut. The mineral called ruby is indeed commonly used as a magical material, and Baskerville indeed has no real need for the mined rubies. Hearing this, Camus smiled and asked, is that not so? He laughed and continued, but leasing land, it seems your greatest tragedy is that no one in Baskerville is stupid enough to rent out their land for mere pocket change. Camus was startled. What? She shouted. You just said Baskerville has no interest in the rubies, and Vikier replied, that is right. We only care about our territory, and that is why we told you not to trespass. Now it was Hugo's turn to look satisfied. After all, the ones troubled by the lack of rubies are you not? His reasoning was tight enough to make Camus irritated. The girl pointed again at the model and said, "Fine. I will show you the precise reason why we have rights to those rubies. Here is your family's land, and this side is ours." Then Camus extended her hand into Vikir's side, leaning forward to ask, "Now whose hand is this?" Looking at Camus's insolence, Vikir found some amusement and coldly replied, "Are you asking when your hand reaches into our land, whose hand it belongs to?" He immediately grabbed Camus's wrist. Vikir declared coldly, "Obviously it belongs to me." What seemed a casual statement made Camus's cheeks flush red. She struggled to pull her hand back and shouted, "What are you saying? How am I yours, you fool?" Vikir asked back, "Who said you are mine?" This snapped Camus back, blushing as she looked at him. He quickly drew the dagger he had prepared at his waist. Adolf and John widened their eyes in shock at the sight. Vikir's crimson eyes shone with a chilling light as he said, "I said your hand belongs to me." Camus's eyes widened in fear and astonishment as she asked, "What?" Even someone like Hugo was slightly surprised at the malice Vikir revealed. Vikir quickly raised the knife, aiming at Camus's hand with the intention of cutting it off. The little girl was terrified, her eyes tightly shut, tears streaming down as she screamed, "Save me, uncle." Adolf's voice, filled with killing intent, resounded behind him, "Foolish brat, get away from my niece immediately." Vikir was startled and realized the oppressive aura behind him. He stood still without reacting. Camus took the chance to pull her hand back, then ran into Adolf's arms and cried, "Uncle, he was about to cut off my hand." Adolf hugged his niece tightly, his face filled with anger as he shouted, "What is the meaning of this?" Hugo glanced at Vikir and said, "Enough with the joke, son." Calmly, Vikir placed his hand on the blade and admitted, "My fault." Then he bent the blade with his hand and continued, "At home we always play like this. I am too used to it." Adolf exclaimed in surprise, "A fake blade? What kind of toys do you give to children?" Vikir quickly bowed his head. "I only intended to tease her a little. I didn't expect she would cry. Please forgive me, sir. Children of the Baskerville family have been playing with toys like this since childhood." Adolf, unable to accept this, reproached, "You call that a joke?" Hugo stepped in to ease the situation for his son. "They are only children playing together. Don't you think you are overreacting, Vice Chief Morgue?" He added, "I have some matters I wish to discuss with you regarding the ruby mine. I am sure you would also like to sit down and talk. So just let the two kids sort it out themselves." Camus stood there clenching her fists and declared firmly, "Uncle, I will never forgive this. You better watch yourself." What she received in return was Vikir's innocent smile. The sparring match between the Baskerville and Morgue families had begun, with many arenas already set up, a huge crowd from both clans present, and the best seats reserved for the important figures. It was an occasion for children aged 8 to 15 to gather and fight against each other. The 8-year-olds would compete in mana theory or mana sensing, but most of the attention was drawn to the life and death battles of the 15-year-olds. However, this year, all eyes were fixed on one particular place. The renowned mage family, the Morgues, with their representative, the genius Camus Morgue. The iron-blooded swordsman clan, the Baskervilles, with their genius, Vikir van Baskerville. At the request of the Morgue clan members, the duel between these two prodigies would be held under real combat training rules. The bell signaling the start of the sparring match rang. Camus stood there looking at him confidently. "Prepare yourself. When I am serious, I will not hold back." She closed her eyes and chanted strange sounds, forming a magic circle before her. The spectators gasped in astonishment. That is, Camus stood there smiling, 3 magic circles behind her and 1 beneath her feet. People called it quadruple layer magic. Adolf stroked his beard and remarked with a mocking tone, "I thought she could only cast magic appropriate for a 15-year-old child, but to cast 4 spells at once, truly worthy of being the genius mage of the Morgue family." At that moment in the arena, Camus directed the circles toward Vikir. He sidestepped right and slid left to avoid fire and water, then confidently rushed forward, ignoring lightning. Vikir smiled and said to Camus, "You are showing off too much. It would be better if you concentrated your power into a single spell to attack. Don't you think so?" Camus retorted, "Why should I listen to you? You are just an idiot who knows nothing about magic." She raised a sand wall to block the approach of a swordsman, then leapt backward. Vikir shouted, "An idiot. Hearing you say that really hurts me." Then he kicked down the sand wall. As Vikir charged forward, Camus thought, he went through the wall as easily as slicing bread. Is this the power of the Baskerville clan immersed in the river Styx? She closed her eyes tightly as if resigned. I was careless. But nothing happened. Camus slowly opened her eyes in confusion. In front of her stood Vikir, smiling as he placed his hand on her forehead. Then Vikir delivered a powerful flick to her forehead, sending her flying backward, screaming in pain. Adolf above shouted in shock, a flick of the finger. Meanwhile, Camus held the lump on her forehead and asked, "Why did you flick me? Are you holding back because your opponent is a girl? I will not forgive you for this." Vikir smirked proudly, pointing at his own forehead to remind her, "You've got a bump there." Then he turned away and declared, "Let's end it here, before anything unexpected happens," while Camus sat there hurt and angry. Immediately she cast magic again and shouted, "Sand wall," twice. Then Camus laughed loudly in challenge. "Now there are 2 layers, let's see how you break through." Vikir thought, what's the point of this? I could just go around to reach her. But he still dropped the sword in his hand, clenched his fist to smash the wall, and replied, "Fine, if you want it, you'll get it." With that, Vikir punched hard into the sand wall, scattering dirt and rocks everywhere. Right after, his hand appeared again before Camus's astonished eyes. Vikir sneered coldly, "Now I have a question for you. Whose hand just pierced the wall?" She gasped, "What?" Vikir drew back his hand, preparing another flick, and said, "The answer is the hand of someone stronger." Along with his cold voice, he delivered another flick to the same spot, making the swelling even bigger and redder. Vikir stood there full of confidence with the overwhelming dominance he had just displayed, while Camus once again fell backward to the ground. Her forehead swelled into a huge red lump, steaming, her eyes brimming with tears of pain. Camus sat there clutching her head in anger, her voice trembling as she screamed, "I will kill you." Seeing the firepower aimed at him, Vikir thought, to endure such pain and still keep fighting. Children these days are really stubborn. He jumped back to dodge, though if he wanted, he could snap her neck in 0.1 seconds. But that would bring trouble. What should I do to calm her down? Looking at the arena behind, Vikir decided, better let others handle this. On that side, 2 youths from the clans were clashing, sword against magic with loud explosions. The Baskerville member mocked, "Such weak magic. I will slice through them all." Vikir assessed, that foolish mage kept casting fire magic, and the swordsman was no smarter for endlessly cutting them down. He thought, I could use those 2 idiots. Meanwhile, Camus shouted, "Why do you keep dodging?" She charged with fire magic in her hand, yelling, "Damn you, stop running, fight me properly." At the back of the arena, the Morgue clan member gathered firepower in his hand and challenged, "Let's see if you can cut this." While the Baskerville member roared, "Bring it on," over here Vikir had retreated to the edge of the arena, preparing his scheme to use their clash to help calm Camus down. Vikir's voice rang out calling her name, Camus Morgue, making her flinch slightly. He leaned back, the fire spell from the other arena about to be launched, and reminded her, better prepare a defensive spell. Camus's eyes widened blankly, staring at the light rushing toward her, exclaiming, "What?" From the stands above, Adolf could no longer keep calm. He stood up in panic and shouted, "No!" A huge explosion erupted after that magic strike, engulfing the entire arena in a sea of fire, smoke and dust filling the sky. A member of the Morgue family stood there staring toward the explosion, smoke and dust everywhere. The older ones worriedly said, "Oh no, Lady Camus is in there." Adolf, also anxious for his niece, shouted, "Camus." Inside the haze, she was thinking to herself as she heard the voices of the people, "Is that your voice?" Camus's expression darkened as she pondered. What should I do now? I avoided being injured with a defensive spell, but the fire magic burned all my clothes. The girl sat there, her clothes torn to shreds by the flames, both arms wrapped around her shoulders, her face full of unease. Camus looked outside. Because of the smoke, they still could not see her condition. If everyone saw her once the smoke cleared, they would laugh at her. She would die of embarrassment. Thinking this, she tightly closed her eyes, bowed her head, face blushing, eyes brimming with tears. While Camus was secretly praying for help, "Someone please save me," the figure of Vikir approached. A cloak was suddenly draped over her, leaving Camus stunned. Vikir stood there, having taken off his own cloak, and looked down saying, "Put this on." Camus blushed and asked, "Why are you protecting your opponent?" Vikir teased, "Then I'll take back my cloak." She quickly replied, "That's not what I meant." "But then you won't have a cloak." Vikir smiled, "I don't really care about things like that." Camus, both shy and moved, wondered, "This idiot, why is he caring for me?" She spoke up, "Hey, your hand is bleeding." Vikir looked at it and thought, "A scratch from the sticks. That damned swordsman must have added some aura." A moment later, the smoke cleared, faintly revealing the people outside. Everyone saw Vikir standing there, his body more toned than his peers, while Camus sat wrapped in his cloak. Adolf finally relaxed. "She is safe, thank God." Some young men of the Baskerville family said, "Lady Morgue is sitting on the ground, but the one bleeding is the Baskerville child. It is hard to judge who the winner is." They marveled. "Look at his body. Must be thanks to the sticks. Just one look at those muscles is enough to know how hard he has trained." Adolf quickly stepped down to protect his niece, and along with the voices of the people, an 8-year-old genius. The scene shifted to the corridor, where chandeliers on the ceiling had been lit. Hugo and Vikir were walking together. He asked, "So, how was the battle with the Morgue girl?" Vikir calmly replied, "It was very interesting. I understood the meaning of this event once again." Hugo continued, "A battle with a mage is very different from one with a swordsman. So why didn't you finish it?" Vikir answered, "I was a little confused facing a lady." Hugo reminded him, "Lowering your guard in battle will get you hurt. Take that wound as a lesson for the future." Hearing this, Vikir clenched his bandaged arm tightly. He looked at Hugo and wondered, "Is Hugo worried about me?" In his previous life, when he was young, Vikir did not remember much about Hugo. The man was always cold, irritable, and violent. People often said his bad temper was because he lost his wife and eldest daughter. But that was none of his concern. The two continued down the corridor. Hugo then asked, "What do you think we should do with the ruby mine?" Vikir replied, "I think we should abandon it." The answer surprised him. "Abandon control of the ruby mine. Why do you think so?" Vikir explained, "The main purpose of the Baskerville family is to build a vast territory. The location of the ruby mine is downstream of Black Blood Mountain. The monsters and savages there are a major obstacle to us." He continued, "If we maneuver the Morgue family cleverly, we can minimize damage in the conquest of that land." Hugo smiled in agreement. "Indeed," he added, "once the Morgues control the ruby mine, they will leave people in that area. We just need to drive the monsters and savages to attack there. That way we kill 2 birds with 1 stone." Hugo stroked his beard, eyes full of calculation. "The ruby will be bathed in the blood of our enemies. If that happens, the Morgues will have to think twice before daring to enter our territory." He patted Vikir's head and affirmed, "Your thoughts match mine about 90%. Vikir thought seriously. Of course it turned out like this, because it was his idea from the start. The one responsible for driving the monsters and savages to attack them is me. Vikir added, "Even so, we should still be cautious with the Morgue family." Hugo dismissed, "Unnecessary. I have already placed spies around that area." Suddenly Adolf appeared at the side, startling father and son who turned to look. He stood there and said, "Here you are, master. My niece Camus is hiding behind me, still in her torn clothes from the duel." Adolf spoke, "May we talk before I return?" She cast Vikir a shy glance, a hint of bashfulness coloring her cheeks. A moment later, outside the mansion, sunlight streamed through the window. Inside a room, Hugo sat there and began. Do you have something to say, Vice Chief? Adolf straightforwardly said, I have something to tell you. He continued, we have considered that we should resolve the ruby mine issue peacefully. Perhaps a usage fee is one solution. Hugo immediately asked, what, a fee for stepping into our territory? Adolf made a most surprising proposal. What do you think of a marriage alliance? Hugo's voice resounded, a marriage alliance? Adolf replied, yes, a marriage alliance between the Morgue and Baskerville families. Hearing that, he asked further, who are you thinking of? While the adults spoke, the two children exchanged glances. Camus's eyes on Vicky are somewhat special. Her face flushed red. He stroked his niece's head and added, what do you think of the Baskerville heir and the Morgue heiress, my niece? Hearing this, a big question mark popped up in Camus's mind. He added, my niece is a genius. This child has both looks and intellect. She lacks nothing. I am certain she would be a fitting match for the Baskerville genius. Hugo replied, my eldest son is 25 this year. You think there is no problem with the age gap? Camus clutched Vicky's cloak tightly as she heard Adolf answer, 8 and 25, only 17 years apart. Not much difference. That is not a problem. Suddenly the girl spoke up, I will not accept anyone weaker than my mother. Her uncle turned to soothe her. Camus, if you insist on marrying someone stronger than your mother, you will be single for life. The girl turned away firmly, that is my condition, and I also dislike too large an age gap. I want someone my age or a little older. Hearing this, Hugo growled, brat, this is not a buffet for you to choose from. Camus confidently replied, I know, and I do not intend to play games here. She hesitated, blushing, casting a sparkling glance at the boy in front of her. Both family heads noticed that gaze. Vikier himself was also slightly startled in confusion. Adolf, a bit anxious, muttered, don't tell me. Then he whispered into the girl's ear, though everyone seemed to hear, that is not possible. That boy is an illegitimate son of the head. No matter what happens, in the future he will only be a small fish in a big pond. And of course Hugo also heard those words. His face darkened with displeasure. This man is making me angry. He cut in, besides, a marriage alliance is an important matter and the decision belongs to those involved. Son, what do you think? Camus looked over with eyes full of anticipation for Vikir's answer. He fell silent for a moment, the sudden situation confusing everyone. Vikir's lips moved, hesitating slightly as he gave his answer. Then he clearly spoke each word, I agree. Hearing that, both uncle and niece of the Morgue family were utterly stunned. Adolf's face darkened, but he dared not show it, only thinking, what, this brat? What? Adolf appeared displeased, thinking, this little mouse. He says he will agree if that is what my lord demands. How dare he act so insolent before the only direct daughter of my family? Meanwhile, Camus raised her two hands shyly. Wait, does that mean he does not dislike me after all? Is he the type who is easily embarrassed? Hugo raised his hand to reassure. Direct line and collateral line mean nothing in Baskerville. Sometimes Le produces inferior children and Van produces extraordinary ones. Adolf was astonished and asked back, the Lord values him so highly, is he truly that talented? Then he stood up, facing Vikier, examining and observing him. Vikier did not hesitate to lift his head to meet Adolf Morgue's gaze. He was the sixth seat of the Morgue family. Adolf was extremely powerful among the heads of the Morgue clan, a prestigious and outstanding family in magic, and he was also known to be a foolishly doting uncle to his niece. Adolf stroked his chin, then looked closely at Vikir's face and said, Boy, I will not tell you this every time, but talent alone will never be enough to be Camus's husband. He placed his hand on Vikir's shoulder and thought, this arranged marriage is a proposal from the family, and not my own will. Personally, I see none of the Baskerville children fit for Camus. Adolf smiled inwardly, thinking, why does this child seem so mature? Then he asked Vikier, why are you not answering me? Are you not listening? Vikier replied with confident wit, I stopped listening because you said you were not talking to me. Hugo looked pleased, while Camus was utterly surprised. How could he be so bold before her uncle? Vicier's answer made Adolf laugh aloud. He turned and suggested, "Lord Baskerville, may I speak privately with this child?" Hugo questioned. "The great sorcerer of the Empire intends to interrogate an 8-year-old child." Adolf replied, "He is the boy who will become my niece's husband one day." He turned to look at his niece and added, "I request this not as a representative of the Morgue family, but as her uncle." Camus hurriedly clasped her hands together, trying to protest. "Uncle, it is not like that." Adolf laughed. "Silence, my dear. Sometimes matters like this are necessary." Then he turned to the patriarch and asked, "So, Lord Baskerville, what is your answer?" Without hesitation, Hugo agreed. "Very well, if you insist." Vikier looked up confidently, ready for this private meeting. A little later, outside the mansion, Adolf and Vikier stood on the training ground, while the reluctant spectators were Hugo and Camus. Adolf smiled and said, "O child of Baskerville, I will test your ability, so show me everything you have." Vikier replied, "Yes, I understand," while thinking, "You will fail if I show everything." Adolf raised his hand to cast magic upon the ground. "I will give you a small advantage." At once, a jar began to form from the very earth of the arena through his magic. Camus exclaimed in astonishment, "He is creating a jar, just as I expected of my uncle. He is proficient in earth, fire, and water spells." Then the jar was filled with water. Adolf balanced it on his head and declared, "I will duel with a jar full of water on my head. If you can make me spill a single drop, you will win." Vikier stood silently observing. Adolf Morgue was a formidable man. In his previous life, he had never hoped to even approach him. This was a great chance to experience a fraction of his power. He glanced outward. Surely Hugo would allow him to think along the same lines. Vikier wondered, what would my odds be if I fought him with all the power I had before regression? An assassination ambush might have a 50% chance, perhaps 10% in direct combat. Adolf smiled, raising his hand in invitation. "Now come at me." Vikier began moving strategically. "I do not need to fight with all my power. I only need to display enough to satisfy Hugo. Time to test the skill of a great sorcerer." Thinking so, he launched his attack with sword in hand. Yet Adolf stood calmly, unshaken. Camus's face showed clear shock. She cried out in warning, "You cannot charge him head-on." Hearing this startled Vikier slightly. As his strike fell, a protective shield rose from Adolf. He turned and asked his niece, "Why did you tell him that, my dear? A magic shield is the best counter to a swordsman." Adolf affirmed, "This shield cannot be broken without special aura." Vikier was repelled, standing there grimacing. Then Adolf summoned fire magic behind him and coldly declared, "Now it is my turn to attack." At his words, blazing firebolts shot swiftly at Vikier. Camus scolded angrily, "Uncle, that is too much. You never used such spells when dueling me." He turned to ask, "Camus, whose side are you on now?" Adolf shouted furiously, "You brat, I will not forgive you." Hugo observed calmly, "He attacks with such speed, it is nearly unavoidable. It seems I need not interfere. Let us see what this young hound reveals before the great sorcerer." Vikier, on the other hand, was intensely focused. So this is his level of skill. In truth, Vikier had regressed into the body of an 8-year-old. But he retained his combat experience. He could lure him into lowering the shield. Vikier's eyes gleamed with deadly confidence. "I could even kill him." He continued striking at the magic barrier, though it was of little effect, never ceasing his swings. Adolf sneered confidently, "It will make no difference if you try 100 times. Your sword cannot pierce my shield." Yet the sword aura kept coming relentlessly. With both hands gripping his sword, Vikier thrust forward, the tip striking the same spot on the shield. A dazzling flash erupted, small cracks forming. Adolf saw them and grew uneasy. Is he attacking the same place repeatedly? He is like a precise machine. His focus and swordsmanship are remarkable. Yet with the relentless assault, Vikier's blade began to fracture. He struck once more at that point, his sword shattering completely. Adolf smiled, "But this is no different from trying to break a stone wall by throwing an egg. You should have calculated the durability of my wall and your blade." He added, "There is merit in stubbornly trying to break through." but you must judge your opponent carefully before using such a tactic. Outside, both spectators were surprised. Adolf continued praising Vikir, unaware that water had begun to spill down. You have talent, but you still lack much to be engaged to my niece. But by the time he realized, it was too late. A fragment of the broken sword had slipped through the crack and struck the jar on his head. Adolf exclaimed in shock. "What? A shard of the sword has shattered my jar." Vikir replied, "I think that is enough." He smiled faintly. "Or should I make it leak even more?" Camus covered her mouth in astonishment and delight. "That was mere coincidence, but he defeated my uncle. Does that mean the marriage?" Hugo smiled thoughtfully. "Coincidence? A shard just happened to break the jar." Vikir's face shone with confidence before Adolf. And Hugo, deep inside, judged, "Vikir van Baskerville, perhaps I have raised a more cunning hound than I imagined." 7 years later, at the training camp of the Baskerville family, a massive fortress stood tall under the sunlight. At this moment, a gigantic beast with sharp curved horns and fiery red eyes was standing there growling, baring its sharp fangs and exhaling a misty white breath. Then it roared to the sky and prepared to charge, its target being the young hunting dogs of the Baskerville family standing before it. Yet strangely enough, in front of such a formidable foe, this team of young hounds looked remarkably determined with steadfast gazes. This beast was called the Oxbear, and right now it was rushing forward to attack the squad. The children of the Baskerville family, with sharp swords in their hands, leapt to strike down. The Oxbear stood firm, ready to resist, deflecting a downward slash by tilting its head to use its horns, sparks flashing. Its eyes carried a deadly glint, and with a massive yet surprisingly agile body, it rushed straight into the group. A trainer of the Baskerville family, Brown, silently observed with a slight hum. He then reminded them, "If you must fight an opponent stronger than you, the best way is to look for an opportunity to flee far away. Do not greedily try to kill them. It is more effective to aim for the back of their legs." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 shadows suddenly darted past the children. They were none other than the talented triplets of the hunting squad, with Highbrow attacking the head of the Oxbear, while Midbrow and Lowbrow targeted its legs following Brown's advice. When it was done, the 3 brothers stood proudly, smug and arrogant. Brown looked at them and thought, just as expected of the young masters Highbrow, Midbrow, and Lowbrow, as I anticipated, their aura has been completed, a dark red. Still more Oxbears drooled hungrily for the flesh of the children. Yet the youngsters remained determined, charging to meet the monsters with eyes full of confidence and resolve, using the hints they had been given. Soon blood was spilling onto the training ground, uncertain whether human or Oxbear. After some time Brown clapped his hands in praise. "Everyone, well done." He added, "With this performance you have all reached the level of elite swordsmen. With diligent practice you have now mastered the first phase of the Baskerville swordsmanship. From this moment the 7 years of training are complete." Behind him lay a heap of bare corpses pierced with swords and horns severed. Brown continued, "Unlike the Oxbears locked here, the ones on the mountains of La Rouge et La Noire are far stronger. Even I cannot be certain I could handle them." His voice carried a warning. "I want all of you to etch into your minds that today's clash is nothing compared to what you will face in the future. Death is always closer to us than you think. With talent and passion surely you will overcome the coming hardships, or at least gain experience and strive to survive with everything you have." After a pause Brown raised his hand in salute and declared, "Now I congratulate you all on graduating successfully. I wish you luck in the battles ahead." With his words, the Baskerville children also raised their hands to salute in return. Afterwards 2 youngsters sat facing each other. One asked, "Hey, which knight squad do you plan to join?" The other replied, "I have 3 choices. First Doberman, second Pitbull, and third Rottweiler." His friend responded, "Then we will not be on the same path. I want to join my own Wolf Fang Knight squad. There are a total of 7 missions for knights of the Baskerville family, each shaping our minds. At present the missions available are investigation, protection, assassination, suppression, and direct confrontation." The boy curiously asked his friend, "Furthermore, Where do you think he will go? The short-haired one was startled. Who? The other threw a glance behind him and answered, obviously, Vikier van Baskerville. He was sitting alone upon the ox-bear he had just slain with a sword embedded in its body. Sensing someone talking about him, he looked down with a question mark looming in his mind. As they whispered, they noted he had handled an ox-bear larger than the one they had just fought. Guessing he must be a high-level elite swordsman, they said they heard he had reached the third fang already, which meant he was equal to the hunting squad members. Yet contrary to their admiration, Vikier looked disappointed. It took more time than I expected. In truth, Vikier was now at the level of intermediate swordmaster, the fifth fang. It had taken him 7 years to advance from lower swordmaster to intermediate, surpassing the point of his previous life in terms of swordsmanship. Still, he thought this progress was slower than planned. Suddenly, from behind, the chief butler called, "Young Master Vikier." He turned and asked, "Barrymore?" The old man solemnly announced, "The family head is looking for you, young master." With a gentle smile he added, "It seems your position has been decided." Vikier answered quietly, "I understand," seeming to already guess. A while later, before the grand door of the family head's chamber, Vikier stood respectfully inside. "It has been a while, sir. How have you been, family head?" Hugo sat there with a grunt. 7 years had worn him, his hair longer and scars across his face. Seeing no response, Vikier looked puzzled, then asked, "What happened to the scar on your nose?" Hugo touched it and replied, "When I faced the barbarian tribes on the mountains of Le Rouge et Le Noir, I was struck by an archer." Vikier asked further, "Did you catch them?" Hugo gave a surprising answer, "No, however I left a scar on that bitch's face." His opponent had been a tall woman with long hair and one injured eye. Returning to the main matter, Hugo said, "Anyway, I congratulate you on completing your training. From now on it will only be harder." Vikier responded, "Thank you," while wondering, is he talking about my posting? In his past life at this time he had become a squire of the Pitbull Knight Squad, sent to the mountains of Le Rouge et Le Noir for 21 months facing countless deadly trials, thrown into battlefields like discarded rotten meat. Children of the Baskerville family were divided into elites or mercenaries once they turned 15. Mercenaries died on the battlefield while elites studied politics and governance, and after gaining battlefield experience, the mercenaries served the elites to help them rise. What narrowed the gap between them was the fifth fang of Baskerville swordsmanship, which was why in his past life his swordsmanship had stopped at the fourth fang. Vikier's thoughts circled, "No way Hugo would waste a genius like me on elite education." Then Hugo spoke, "Son, I want you to try becoming a senator." This stunned Vikier, a huge question flashing in his mind, completely unexpected. He asked suspiciously, "A senator?" Hugo explained, "A senator manages law and administration in the territory of Baskerville, upholding justice, attracting businesses to work here." He added, "Simply put, you will oversee everything large and small in our family." Vikier thought, Hugo really wants a genius like me to become an elite. Hugo smiled and said, "What you have achieved will place you above other geniuses for at least a decade. Therefore, I am giving you suitable treatment. You will serve as vice-consul of a city called Underdog, the city of the weak. Currently, both the consul and vice-consul seats are vacant." Probing, Hugo asked, "Do you accept this offer?" Vikier answered politely, "I will follow your will. But before that I want to say something." This aroused Hugo's curiosity. "What is it?" Vikier then raised the matter concerning the dispute over gemstone mines with the Morg family. Hugo asked with confusion, "What issue do you have with the Morgs?" His voice continued, "I am not saying I will give you a reward. Are you asking for one?" Vikier hesitated, "I am asking to borrow it." Even the calm chief butler was shocked by this answer. Vikier added half-heartedly, "If this is too difficult, you need not mind." Then a seal was pressed onto a paper, and Hugo's voice said, "No trouble at all." Smiling with the seal in his hand, Hugo said, "I trust you will not do anything foolish, son." With confidence, Vikier declared, "I will not do anything to trouble you." Yet inside he felt uneasy. "No matter how many times I hear it, I cannot get used to this bastard calling me son." Hugo said he would give him an allowance, something Vikier in his past life could never have imagined. After finishing with the family head, Vikier walked the hall alongside butler John. John called, "Young master," startling him. With a sincere smile John said, "The master values you greatly, young master." He explained further, "He did not immediately throw you into real battlefields and gave you a consul position. Is that not the path of a future ruler? Surely he holds you in high regard." But Vikir's answer surprised John even more. "Only if I fulfill the duties of vice-consul properly." He thought, "Better yet, if I can make use of the authority of vice-consul, I can safely raise my skills to new heights. I care nothing for the job itself." Memories of the past flashed, unerasable. He still remembered the feeling of his head severed at the execution block, and the man standing before him then was Hugo. His eyes filled with hatred toward his father, with the thought, "I will make you feel that same sensation." Hugo Le Baskerville. Hugo Le. Scene shifts to Baskerville territory, the city of Underdog, a vast city with tightly packed houses and a small river running through the heart of the metropolis. A large mansion owned by the Baskerville family is located in the central area, along with a small fountain in front. A bald nobleman with a frowning, arrogant face stands there giving orders. "Oh my, tomorrow the new vice-consul will arrive. You must clean this place thoroughly." He further instructs, "Since he comes from the main castle, pay special attention." Two servants standing there with cleaning tools in their hands politely reply, "Yes, sir." One of them speaks up, "What do you think the new vice-consul will look like? I hope he will be someone experienced in business and trade." The other laughs loudly and asks back, "What, you haven't heard?" While a pair of silent footsteps approaches, the servant's voice continues, "I heard he is only 15 years old." "What, 15? They gossip. What can we expect from a 15-year-old? This time we are doomed." Suddenly they realize someone has entered. One of them rushes over and grabs his shoulder thinking, "Who is this kid? Did another staff member bring him here?" Then he shouts, "Hey you, this is not a place you are allowed to enter." Vikier turns his face back, the familiar red pupils of the family flashing, his voice coldly demanding, "Let go, immediately." He immediately presents a scroll before them. Both servants widen their eyes in astonishment, exclaiming, "This is..." Then they quickly change their tone. "I see you have arrived too early, vice-consul." The other worries, "Why would he come a day earlier?" Vikier points and orders, "You there, prepare some wine and women right now." Vikier walks in with a briefcase and a sword at his waist, declaring, "I need to hold a party." The two servants stand frozen in shock, speechless. Only after a while do they ask each other, "A party?" After some time, a large buffet party is laid out, with wine, cakes, fruits, and meat filling the tables, along with shimmering candlelight. The noble men and women invited to the party drink wine, dance, and laugh joyfully together, looking utterly delighted. This man is Chihuahua Baskerville. He is the office manager in Underdog, and he is in a rather displeased state. Witnessing this makes his face wrinkle like a jujube. Looking through the office window down below, Chihuahua thinks to himself, "I can't believe it. He is going to host a drinking party on the very first day of taking office. Such an unreasonable man was chosen. Everyone once had a hard time with the previous consul, dismissed for taking bribes, but holding a drinking party at such a sacred workplace is..." Unable to contain himself, he loudly scolds, "How despicable is that bastard? Yes, ruin everything. I bet the whole city will be destroyed before he even wakes up." Suddenly, Vikier appears behind Chihuahua with those familiar eyes, leaning close to his ear, asking, "Are you the manager?" Chihuahua startles and turns around, exclaiming, "Consul." While inwardly panicking, when did he arrive here? The boy stands there introducing himself. "I am the newly appointed vice-consul, Vikier Van Baskerville." He responds, "My name is Chihuahua Baskerville." The boy stares at the man before him and repeats his name, "Chihuahua Baskerville, huh?" Then Vikier directly asks, "You have no middle name?" The familiar question leaves him wide-eyed in shock. Chihuahua's hands clench tight, feeling extremely uncomfortable inside. Again, if someone has no middle name, it means they come from outside the family. Simply put, they are not blood related but only staff. "I can't believe it. Every bastard who comes here treats me like that just because of this. But unexpectedly, Vikier places his hand on his shoulder and gives him a friendly smile, saying, "I like it." His eyes widen in astonishment. Being treated this way for perhaps the first time leaves Chihuahua rather surprised. While still wondering, what? Vikier continues, opening the ledger. Glancing as he speaks, "I reviewed your personal information before I arrived. You are from this city, aren't you?" He replies, "Yes, I was born and raised here." The boy immediately asks further, "Which means you know this place very well, right?" Vikier continues, "I know very well about the hardships those working in the field have endured. I have no intention of interfering with your work, so I hope you continue doing it well." Chihuahua stammers, "Ah, yes," then suspiciously ponders, "What is this? Is this a new way to harass someone?" Watching the young master standing there reviewing documents, he wonders, why is he here after the party? Vikier closes the ledger, saying, "There are no issues with federal law, but there are some oddities in the judicial system." He asks again in astonishment, "You read all that already, in such a short time?" The boy begins to associate with gold coins and continues, "The problem with the week is that many black market enterprises are operating, and that economy is standing upon the law." Manager Chihuahua dumbfoundedly listens as he reasons, "The issue will not be solved simply by halting their operations. We will have to eliminate each core leader of those underground markets." Vikier, with hands in his pockets, looking down at the party, "The role of vice consul is to create laws and enforce them. I must also respect the laws previously established. But I will add a new law to the existing ones." He immediately questions, "You will enact a new law?" The boy coldly replies, "It will drain that underground market completely within a week. But if I want to create a new law and enforce it, I need a reason." Chihuahua asks again, "Why would you need a reason when they are doing something illegal?" Watching the nobles feasting, Vikier explains, "I am young and still new, officially appointed only tomorrow. To convince them I must have a performance." He smirks coldly, eyes gleaming with pride. "So I will lay down some dung to attract the flies." Chihuahua stands there glancing over, thinking, "Oh my God, he is planning." Scene shifts to the main street of Underdog at Dortsmile Road, where a large building stands along with a spacious square and an information board. Many people are gathering here. The crowd, from young to old, men and women of all classes, gather buzzing with chatter. Vikier stands there, behind him the announcement board, in his hand a long iron rod, his aura exuding authority. The young man beside Chihuahua wonders, what is the vice consul's plan? He has stood there since early morning. The other replies, "How should I know? But many people have gathered." When realizing the time is right, Vikier addresses the crowd below. "Listen carefully. I am the newly appointed vice consul." People look at him murmuring, "He looks so young, so cute. What can a kid like that do?" Ignoring the chatter, Vikier continues, "I am sure you all have read the public announcements here. Although the vice consul has changed, these autonomous laws of the Baskerville family remain in effect. The autonomous constitution of Baskerville, and its many articles written on the board behind." Some youths in the crowd mock each other. "I doubt they will keep them all. Those in power are always like that. I suspect it will take a long time before he lobbies to maintain the territory." Chihuahua behind shouts angrily at them, "Fools, have you forgotten who is responsible for your safety? He comes from the main castle of the Baskerville family. Do I have to press a sword to your throats to make you calm down?" They realize the seriousness and mutter among themselves, "Tisk tisk. If Chihuahua says so, we should stop. If Chihuahua were the vice consul, it would be better. How can a kid like that enforce the law?" Meanwhile, Vikier still stands silently listening. He grips the iron rod in his hand tighter. Then he raises it high into the sky with unclear intent, but his eyes are extremely stern. The people below are confused by this action of the newly arrived vice consul. With all his strength, Vikier drives the rod into the ground. Light flashes and dirt and rocks scatter. The townsfolk gasp in shock, eyes wide and mouths agape witnessing it. Even manager Chihuahua and the retainers at the mansion are surprised. Vikier releases the rod. It remains firmly embedded in the ground right there. He slowly rises to declare, "With my authority as vice consul, I hereby announce a new special law. The people focus on the rod planted there, still unclear of its meaning. Vikir's face is serious. Special Law of House Vikir, Article 1, Clause 1. Whoever pulls this stake out shall receive 100 million gold. Hearing this, Chihuahua and the two retainers behind him freeze. The surrounding space falls silent for a moment. The people below show little different expressions. Most remain skeptical. Questions echo repeatedly. What? The whole crowd in uproar. In everyone's mind is the number 100 million gold, and before their eyes the rod standing planted there. The Special Law of House Vikir, Article 1, Clause 1. Whoever pulls out this stake will immediately receive 100 million gold. Decreed by Vikir van Baskerville, Vice Consul. The people could not believe their ears, looking at each other in doubt. 100 million, that is what a man earns in 4 years of labor. Who would give away 100 million just for pulling out a piece of wood? Chihuahua and the retainers of the house stood frozen in shock. Vikir stood there with arms folded across his chest and asked aloud, "No one? Is there truly no one willing to take the money?" He looked at the crowd and continued, "Then I have no choice. The Special Law of House Vikir, Article 1, Clause 2. Whoever pulls out this stake will immediately receive 1 billion gold. Decreed by Vikir van Baskerville, Vice Consul." Vikir raised the stakes at once. Whoever pulls it up will gain 1 billion. Still no one. Laughter rang out from below, confusing him. A middle-aged man stepped forward and scoffed. "Ridiculous. Are you making us the butt of your joke?" The people chimed in angrily. "That is right. Stop playing games and go to bed. 1 billion is not chicken feed." Chihuahua held his head and thought, "Why are we the ones who feel embarrassed?" Vikir addressed the man. "So, you mean no one will step up, then?" The law was amended again. The man and the crowd stared blankly. The Special Law of House Vikir, Article 1, Clause 3. Whoever pulls out this stake will immediately receive 10 billion gold. Decreed by Vikir van Baskerville, Vice Consul. He stood with arms crossed, his gaze firm, declaring, "Whoever pulls it out will be rewarded 10 billion. Then his eyes glowed with the familiar red. His face darkened as he asked sternly, "Still no one?" The crowd began to waver, unable to believe that such a small act could be worth so much. Was he truly serious? Vikir watched them quietly. "Should I try? Are you mad? Who knows what will happen to you?" Some whispered in fear, "Look at the sword at his side. What if he punishes you for greed?" Others doubted the weight of the stake. Perhaps it was impossibly heavy, and it seemed to lean more than before. Surely he has another intention. Best not to go up there. Vikir spoke again. "So still no one. Very well." He had not finished when Chihuahua approached and whispered, "Vice Consul, in our city that amount of money." At that moment a small hand was raised in the crowd. A blonde girl holding a basket of flowers smiled innocently and asked, "May I try?" An old man hurried forward to stop her. "Child, Judy, is that you? The flower seller? Do you know where you are stepping?" The girl turned back and answered, "My mother is sick, so I must do something." The old man warned her again, "You are too naive. You will be cut down if you step up at a time like this." Judy smiled, with snot dripping from her nose. "If that happens, then please take care of my mother." Hearing this, the old man fell silent. Judy stepped forward boldly, standing before Vikir, facing the stake, her face tense. With a runny nose she thought, "Will he truly kill me? Will I become the laughingstock of everyone? At least he might give me a few coins." She advanced with only a small wish, ready to be mocked if only to earn a little change. "I hope I can earn at least as much as this basket of flowers." Vikir pointed down and ordered, "Pull it up." The girl squatted, gripped the stake with both hands, her eyes anxious. The stake shook and rose. Judy had succeeded in pulling it out with surprising ease. The crowd buzzed in shock. She did it. The girl pulled it out. She really did. That child has done it. Judy herself was astonished. What? Why was it so easy? Impossible. A vision of Vikir appeared, blood-red mana swirling around him, hand ready on the sword at his hip, eyes cold and deadly. Judy squeezed her eyes shut, trembling on the verge of tears, thinking, "I am going to be executed." Was it rebellion against the nobles, an unforgivable sin, or was it just my greed? If I die, who will care for mother? Mother, I am sorry. But to her shock, a heavy pouch of gold was placed before her trembling hands. Vikir knelt and gave her the money, saying, "Here, 100 million first." The girl clutched the pouch and whispered only a soft yes, while the crowd gasped in astonishment. He looked at Chihuahua and snapped his fingers, asking, "Where is the child's home? 10 billion will be too heavy. I will have it sent to her house, and I will assign guards to escort her with the reward." Vikir gently patted Judy's head, and even she could not believe what had just happened. Then he smiled at the people and declared, "This is law, and law must be obeyed." Chihuahua was stunned. The approach of this 15-year-old master was beyond belief. Even the crowd began to recognize the authority of this new law. This example became an opportunity for the special law of House Vikir to spread wider than the autonomous laws of House Baskerville. If one breaks the law, punishment will follow. But if one obeys, there is reward. This simple principle engraved itself deeply into the hearts of the people. Do you know the vice-consul? He is truly different. I heard Vice-Consul Vikir always carries a sword with him. Transition to the Baskerville mansion in Underdog. That was the principle of society. Since the enactment of the special law of House Vikir, crimes had decreased significantly and the crime rate was cut in half. A stone plaque inscribed with 4 Chinese characters was hung, the words the promise to move the stake. As Chihuahua wiped his sweat in relief, Vikir smiled and praised, "So this is the essence of the East. You write very well, Manager Chihuahua." The man replied, "I do not think it is a trivial task. In my 20 years of service, I had never once been allowed to touch it." Vikir answered cheerfully, "We cannot grow angry at those who distrust and disregard the law. I only wonder how to capture attention and leave a strong impression." The manager bowed and wept. "I, Chihuahua, will follow you for the rest of my life. I see now that the hardships I faced before meeting you, Vice-Consul, were not in vain." Vikir soothed him. "Calm yourself," he thought. All of this was what Camus Morgue did in her previous life. When she became queen, the crime rate nearly fell to 0, though she used force against politicians, so she was not very beloved. He spread a map on the table with excitement. "The real issue begins now. Since we gave away 10 billion gold, we must find a way to earn it back. Must we not?" Vikir marked several places on the map. "Here is where the illegal organizations hide. I will clean them out and seize their black money." Chihuahua gasped. "How do you know they are there?" Vikir pointed at himself. "I can smell it," he thought. "Of course I know. I investigated and smashed them like mad before the regression." The manager looked on in admiration. How far has he investigated? He always grasps the situation. Suddenly a guard entered urgently. "Vice-Consul," he reported, "there is a summons from the Youth Autonomous Council of the city." Chihuahua's face wrinkled, just as expected, while Vikir folded his arms and smiled confidently. "So the nobles who only bluster in council wish to meet me." The manager explained, "The Youth Autonomous Council includes the Mont Blanc family, the Pior family, the Luovi family, the Channel family, the Ferragamo family, the Hermes family, and the Prada family. They are the second and third generation of the native families of Baskerville territory. Though called a youth council, it is in truth a social organization. It seems these young masters have something to say about the special law of Vikir." Vikir grew thoughtful and then asked, "So the flies have begun to smell the dung?" His words startled the two before him. Vikir smiled with cunning calm, as if everything was within his design. He smirked coldly and declared, "Then let us exterminate the vermin gnawing at the majesty of the city." Transition to the luxurious hotel club in Underdog City, where extravagance knows no bounds, a gathering place for the wealthy in the city. There is a room in the deepest part of the club, a VIP room costing 10 million gold for 6 hours, where a party is taking place. The participants are the 7 core members of the town's youth council. They pour wine and shout with each other, "Build the tower. Bring everything you have here. We will party again all night." They are nobles of the 7 native families of the Baskerville territory. In the room, Yilo, with a bottle of wine in hand, shouted loudly, And with that, the pyramid named Don Quixote Perignon 666 is complete. And you know, each bottle here is worth 10 million gold. He looked down at two servants licking the spilled wine. Yilo spoke. You may drink the stuff that overflowed on the table. Yet they still smiled brightly. Thank you, sir. Thanks to you, we can taste such a valuable drink. We will serve you wholeheartedly. He sat down and spoke to the others. No matter how much we spend, our money will not decrease. Ridu, sitting next to him, added, all thanks to Baskerville we can live like this. Then he raised his glass with a sinister smile. The slave trade is still flourishing, and capturing barbarians as slaves is going very smoothly. All thanks to Baskerville only caring about expanding the borders. Ridu told two friends, and since there are no royal spies around here, this is truly a perfect playground. Even the clubs here are more extravagant than those in the capital. The others replied, not to mention, the Baskerville family is also protecting us. How safe. To be honest, doesn't this make Baskerville our hound? Yilo laughed loudly. Baskerville is just a bunch of sword-crazed fools. Just look at what happened to Massimo Danero. They didn't even know they were trapped by us. Baskerville personally slaughtered the Massimo Danero family, the most loyal among the 8 families. Ridu continued. Thanks to that, the 8 families are now only 7. Yilo propped his feet on the table smugly. That is because they obstructed our fun. On the table filled with luxurious food and drinks, his voice continued. By the way, have you heard the news about the new vice-consul? I asked a spectator. Clearly he is an illegal obstruction. Yilo turned to ask, I think his name is Vikir. Have you heard of him? Ridu replied, no, this is the first time I hear of it. He continued, he is only 15. I heard he held a big party right when he arrived. Surely a great fool. I bet we will get along well. Yilo smiled and proposed, why don't we play a prank on him a bit and assert our position? He suggested, we will hold a huge party with expensive wine and many women. But when the party ends we will leave the bill for him to pay. Ridu responded enthusiastically. Sounds great. Yilo added, how much money can a 15-year-old bureaucrat have? I bet he won't even dare report it to his family for fear of being scolded. He sneered, then we will say it was just a joke and pay. He will never dare disobey us again. As they finished plotting, staff led some girls in and happily announced, sirs, the girls are here. They began commenting on the girls. You still came after all we did. Get her out. She only ruins the mood. Hey you, this time come sit here. While they were enjoying the party, a figure appeared nearby, making Ridu startled and look over. He asked, who is this? Did anyone call for a male waiter? The staff hurriedly answered, sir, isn't he an acquaintance of yours? He replied, I don't know who he is. Vikir stood there without saying a word. The reckless waiter grabbed his hair, face twisted. I didn't even notice anything strange because he walked in too boldly. Hey kid, where do you think this is? Vikir glared. His red pupils appeared staring at them. This startled the blond man and those sitting there. It seemed they had realized something unusual. In an instant, Vikir ignored the waiter, leaving him with a broken arm and a bewildered face, not knowing what happened. A second later, he was clutching his arm, screaming in pain. Vikir stepped forward, glancing at the blonde. He growled angrily, what the hell? Vikir stood there confidently, introducing himself. Vikir van Baskerville is my name. Ridu was startled, sweat dripping down his face, stammering, Vikir, you mean? He shouted, Vice Consul, why are you here? Vikir stood there sternly replied, you summoned me. Yilo laughed loudly, tone slightly nervous, hurriedly waving his hands, oh Vice Consul, you really act quickly. I didn't think you would come right away. They ignored Vikir standing there, turned to each other whispering, should we train the newcomer right now? Let him pay the wine bill. We will pull him to sit with us. And when the party ends we will make him pay. Vikir immediately slammed his hand on the table, shouting loudly, stop this nonsense talk now. The wine tower collapsed. Glasses shattered and wine splashed everywhere in the room. The noble heirs sitting there looked up. They and the girls gasped in astonishment at what they witnessed. Yilo thought, he destroyed the champagne tower with mana resonance, just by touching the table. That means he is a great registered. Vikir stood there stern-faced, staring at them. his hand on the table radiating dark red mana spreading around. Ridu gritted his teeth and muttered, "Damn it, I thought you said he was just a 15-year-old kid." Yilo hurriedly reacted. "You are a mid-level elite swordsman, do something." He immediately dismissed. "Shut up. If I fight him I won't last even 1 second." At that moment, Vikir stepped forward placing his hand on Ridu's shoulder and called, "Hey you," making him jump up. Before Vikir said anything more he hastily explained, "I swear we will pay the wine bill ourselves." Vikir glared viciously and said, "Of course you should pay for the wine you drank. Do you expect me to clean up after you enjoyed the feast?" Ridu grimaced realizing, "Damn it. I accidentally exposed myself." One of them hurriedly explained, "Who would do something so petty?" Yilo added, "We would never dare do that to a Baskerville family member. We only wanted to test your vice consul qualification." He continued, "As you know, Underdog City has declined a bit. We need to know if you can resist temptation." Ridu nodded in agreement. "That's right. You deserve to lead us. We will follow you." Vikir's voice rang out. "A master can test his dog however he pleases, right?" Then he punched Ridu's stomach with great force. Vikir's hand sank into his abdomen. Blood flowed. He added, "However, the reverse is not true. In any situation a dog cannot test its master." Ridu screamed in pain. Vikir sneered coldly. Eyes glowing red declared, "It seems you know no fear because of a little money and power." His voice continued in the VIP room, before their horrified eyes. "That is because you have never truly felt fear." Vikir swung his arm to the side. Blood splattered everywhere. Ridu collapsed to the floor. He stomped on his head glaring at the others asking, "Do you know why he met this fate?" Then he threatened, "If you still don't know then you deserve the same fate." They smiled fearfully muttering, I think I know why." Ridu lay there not daring to move, body trembling, tears and mucus streaming, blood spitting from his mouth, Vikir's foot still on him. Vikir questioned, "Really?" Then Vikir glared and said, "If you know then you need a proper lesson." Hearing that Yilo stood up shouting, "Bastard," the others also stood up aggressively, fists clenched threateningly. "Do you think you can get away with this?" In an instant, Vikir closed in on him sneering, "See, you didn't know either." They froze, faces tense listening to his accusations. Kidnapping, illegal slave trade, disrespecting the Baskerville family. You have committed too many vile acts. He swung his hand delivering a blow adding, "You cannot tame an animal without teaching it a lesson." Blood smeared Vikir's face and clothes. He grinned wickedly with deadly eyes staring at them. "It is time to punish filthy beasts who know no fear," heralding a storm of blood and carnage. Blood and transition to a cellar with a long corridor, both sides and the ceiling lit by torches and candles. Two people are standing there in silence, the light faintly casting their shadows on the floor. None other than Vikir with a stern expression, and Chihuahua standing behind with a troubled frown. A hand grips the iron bars tightly, the stammering voice unable to form words, the general content being, "Hey dog, do you think you can run away like that? I will report this to my father." Yilo is kneeling there crying, his voice still stammering, but will be translated for the viewers. "Just wait until I get out of here. I will kill you. I will never forgive you." He keeps screaming non-stop. "Let me out." Chihuahua exclaims, "Oh my God, what were you thinking? How could you fight to such an extent?" Vikir turns to ask, "Do you think I went a little too far?" He quickly replies, "Of course you did. You should have been gentler. Look, you turned them into punching bags." He speaks calmly, "Don't be so alarmed. I haven't even started yet." The words leave Chihuahua dumbfounded. "What?" Vikir walks on continuing, "Those mayors wanted to stop corruption in some areas and improve life there. But now they themselves have been tainted, to the point where they even covet the power of the Baskerville family." He approaches the bars smiling at the young nobles. "Look at how they fight among themselves. This shows they still haven't learned their lesson." Looking at the blonde with a swollen face, unable to speak, Vikir declares, "At sunset I will personally execute all these beasts." Then he laughs coldly, "And conveniently I will also purge those involved." Chihuahua asks in shock, "You are not joking, are you?" His reply is, "Of course." Hearing their lives were at stake, they immediately scramble crying, I am sorry. Please, forgive me. The young nobles stick their hands out begging. I will give you everything I have. Please don't kill me. The manager beside asks, will the families behind them just stand by and watch? He says to him, they are usually cowardly and cautious, but when needed they can be bold. They will stop supporting the businesses you control, and they will retaliate one way or another. Vikir pushes one of them away smiling. Don't worry, their families cannot complain, because these ones are all involved with lowly criminal organizations in the city's underworld. He asks hurriedly, but do we have any proof, sir? Vikir's voice resounds, I have my ways, don't worry too much. In his mind he thinks, if proof cannot be found, I will just create it. Anyway, I don't care much about the consequences. Soon the age of chaos will come. Vikir will prepare for the battles ahead, and even if not, he will still be admitted into the academy and continue to survive. Vikir speaks, I will tell you your crimes. They stand in the cell bruised and bloody with tears streaming, listening as he proclaims their sins, kidnapping and illegal trafficking of women. In addition, you bribed, threatened, committed crimes, even assaulted and assassinated officials. Yilo hurriedly explains, I never did those things. If you can point out the evidence, I will accept the punishment. Vikir asks back, you will accept the punishment if there is evidence. He sneers coldly at him, you are speaking as if you committed the crime, but there is no evidence of it, aren't you? He immediately furrows his brow, bows his head stammering, that Vikir thinks, it seems he doesn't want to taint his family's reputation, even if it means accepting death. Suddenly a thin man approaches from behind calling, Vice Consul, dragging something heavy. Vikir looks eagerly, finally you came, while Chihuahua is a bit surprised exclaiming, huh. He brings something. From inside a bloody blade tears open the sack revealing a man, bald, small-headed, with big uneven eyes, somewhat perverted, smiling as he speaks. I have completed the mission you assign, sir. Vikir praises him, very punctual, well done. The bald man scratches his head smiling. He lays out a rug on the ground with strange instruments for torture. Then he stands behind Vikir rubbing his hands proudly. I have tortured for 30 years, but this is the first time I have seen such new toys. How could you think of such interesting tools? Vikir answers while looking at the items in his hands. I did not invent them. These things are very common where I used to be. The man asks nervously, did you live in hell or somewhere like that? Vikir replies, something like that. Do you want me to teach you some fun tricks? The man anxiously refuses. I think I will pass. Just watching you use them would make me nauseous. Looking at the tools, Vikir thinks, so nostalgic. With these torture devices, even political prisoners would reveal their military secrets in this age of destruction. This torture technique was developed while fighting against demons. Vikir takes off his vest, face full of excitement and anticipation, in contrast to the blonde trembling in fear exclaiming, oh my god. They anxiously listen as he asks, now what will happen if you don't open your mouths? Vikir rolls up his sleeves smiling coldly, his face showing the cruelty of a villain as he says, please don't say anything, so I have time to recall old memories. At this moment, Yilo's face is filled with extreme fear as tears stream down his cheeks. Then rumors spread quickly. 7 trash heirs living in wealth and crime have all been arrested. That is the only thing groups in the underdog underworld talk about. In taverns people gossip. Weren't they the ones who treated farmers like insects? With the situation under the vice consul, I don't think they will be released soon. Though children of great families, at most they will just be humiliated for a few days, then set free. But according to the law, the sentence for their crimes is death. There is no way he would execute the children of 7 great families. 2 men talk. You fool, don't you know what kind of person the vice consul is? He spent 10 billion just to pull out stakes. The other replies, even so, the consequences of killing them are immeasurable. I bet they will not be executed. The whole city debates. This is a power game between the new politician and the native families. Everything can only end when the native families bow their heads before him. As the people predicted, the Mablanc, Pior, Louis, Chanel, Ferragamo, Hermes, and Prada families sent small gifts of apology to the new vice consul. The local magnates decided to provide. Suitcases full of gold were brought to Vikir's residence. Those trash heirs would be released on bail and only scolded by their fathers. The heads of the native families, Chihuahua beside him was wide-eyed at the money before them. Or at least that is what everyone thought would happen. Flies buzzing around a blonde head, until the 7 heads were displayed in the city square, arranged with a long indictment hung before them. The crowd poured out to watch. The heads pickled in salt, showing twisted expressions, evidence of the pain they endured before death. Notices hung on the heads detailing their crimes and the death sentence imposed. The commoners witnessing this were dumbfounded, everything far beyond their imagination. Vikir smiles and says, "There is nothing to argue when these laws are inherent." He stands by the window adding, "But in reality the criminals are well-known native nobles, so the law must be changed a little." Chihuahua listens anxiously. After receiving this declaration of war, they will surely start plotting. Once this war breaks out, it will only end when one side is annihilated. The city of Underdog will become a bloodbath. Vikir turns back, instructing his right hand, "You had better prepare yourself, Manager Chihuahua. You will be part of the next plan." He startles, pointing at himself, asking, "What?" Transition to another place. Chihuahua with a red bow tie, wearing a mask and looking foolish. He bends down slightly toward the iron cage, asking, "Vice Consul, is this really a plan?" Vikir with long hair laughs coldly, asking back, "Do you not trust me, Chihuahua?" He quickly replies, "It is not that, sir." He thinks to himself, "But is this a good idea, Vice Consul?" Chihuahua stands among a crowd as the iron cage is pushed in by subordinates. A woman also wearing a mask, holding a rope, dragging slaves behind her. A long procession enters a large tent set in a valley forest. Other slaves are shackled in iron chains. Wagons carry goods and money, some perverted nobles clutching young boys, and Vikir inside the iron cage, shackled, disguising himself as a slave to infiltrate this dark and gloomy area.